by.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to your live safari for the afternoon, the sunset safari. It's not setting just yet. It will eventually set over the western horizon over there. That, of course, is the northwestern horizon, because we're now in the midst of winter. My name is James Hendry, and in the tent for the first time today, helping me, Mr. Willem Dorenbrak. That's his surprisingly long thumb for a man of such small proportions. He's about my size too. We're both about 5 feet and 8 inches. That's not very large. Now, before we carry on, a quick word that we'll have Steph out on bushwalk today, and we will also have Jamie out on drive. Before we get going, we're just going to talk you through where we are in Africa. And while we're doing that, just remember you can talk to us at any stage. Hashtag SafariLive on Twitter is the best way to get hold of us. Now, we are in Africa. This is a sort of approximate representation of Africa, as it looks like it was drawn by a 3-year-old. That is because those are my skills. What I wanted to show you, of course, was the first major sort of, or most famous wildlife part of Africa, made famous by the film Out of Africa, and that, of course, is Kenya, where Meryl Streep and Robert Redford made that utterly astounding movie. So please go and watch it if you haven't yet. We are quite a long way from that, and there's often a misconception that Africa is a small place. The continental United States will fit into Africa probably about 3 times. So we are a very, very vast place, and from when Meryl and Robert were knocking about in their biplane, we are probably about 3,000 miles from there, in a magnificent country called South Africa that looks something like this. Now, of course, the proportions of this are going to be totally squonk, aren't they, Willem?
That's okay, I like it.
There we go. That is that is horrendous. That is South Africa, and we are on the western fringes thereof, in a place called the Kruger National Park. I've got that completely wrong. I'm going to rub that out. I'm going to get my black pen. I'm going to ask you to excuse me because I cannot draw. That's pretty much like it is. And we're in the Kruger National Park here on the western fringes of beautiful South Africa. And this particular area, the Kruger Park, and extending into Mozambique down here, somewhere around there, and north into Zimbabwe, constitutes a totally fence-free area of 8 million acres. It's absolutely amazing. And we are on the western fringes of that, on a collection of private reserves called the Sabi Sand, and within the Sabi Sand we are on a reserve called Djuma at the moment. We traverse Arathusa to the west of us and Cheetah Plains to the east of us, and it's just a real joy to be in the middle of one of the world's most iconic wildlife areas. Now, let us go back into the tent, because watching me draw is likely to make you either all fall asleep or laugh to death. And while we're doing that, let's head across to Steph, who's out on foot.
Well, good afternoon. You are welcome to the afternoon bushwalk segment of today's Safari. Anyway, I'm Steph, and on the camera behind you is Dave. And as you can see, we've come into this very, very, very thick area around the back of Galago Camp. Now, as some of you might know, Galago Camp is in the Sabi Sand Game Reserve, which is in the Kruger National Game Reserve, which is in South Africa. And all the way out onto the eastern side of South Africa, probably about 100 miles or so from the Indian Ocean. So, although it's not as cold as in some parts of South Africa, being in the southern hemisphere today we are nice and balmy and warm. Now, you might be asking, what have I got this stick for right here? I'm actually feeling a bit left out. Both James and Brent have got these swagger sticks, and I thought that I'd collect myself one today. So what I've done is I've picked myself a nice combretum branch, and basically what I'm trying to do is I'm going to whittle away at the bark until I'm comfortable with the feel and the shape of it. And so you'll see me doing that for the rest of the show probably. But come on to this termite mound. Obviously in bush that's thick like this, what you want to try and do is get yourself some elevation to see what's around. Now, this is the only termite mound for quite some time. And in actual fact, I think it's the only termite mound that's in this area. I think the next big termite mound that's here is probably in this direction, in that thick bush, by easily, I don't know, about 400 or 500 yards. So actually, this is one of those places that we want to come and stand on and see what we can see. So let me see what is up here. All right, coming up, I mean, you're basically walking up the side of a building, and this is just termites. Termites are these little ants this big, and they've built this thing that is literally about as big as a building, and that has a tree growing on it. As you can see, the termite mound didn't grow around the tree grew on it, and this is a weeping boerbean tree, and this tree is probably easily 300 or 400 years old. That's how old this termite mound is that we're standing on at the moment. But have a look at the vista that just a little bit of elevation gives you. Right there we're looking into the Kruger National Park. So there we're looking straight east of where we're standing at the moment. The sun came up somewhere over there and was busy setting over our shoulder, and between us and that hill that you see over there is a drainage line. That's the Mulwati drainage line. It's sort of a key feature in this particular reserve, and the reason for that is because it carries water through the reserve, and so it has a lot of big trees, has a lot of greener grass relatively speaking, and obviously it attracts a lot more animals. And today we're wanting to walk to that river and scout that river and see what we can show you. But for now, James has got something awesome to show you in the tent.
Now this, everybody, in this rather, oh dear, I've been horribly let down by the producer, Geraldine! You know, can't get good help these days. No matter what you do, it's impossible to get people to help you properly in this area. Anyway, Geraldine's looking very ashamed. She's sitting on a termite mound in abject apology. Aren't you, Jerry?
Yes, Jerry.
There we go. Now this here is a very large feather. The one that may have written the tomes of Shakespeare, for example. And it comes from a white-backed vulture, which of course is one of the very largest birds that we get out here. Probably sits about 2.5 to 3 feet tall, the white-backed vulture. And this comes from its wing, and it's one of the primary wing feathers. And you can imagine, I'm just trying to think how I can best do this. I'll actually show you a diagram next time you come across. But that's basically, the bottom side of the wing is covered in these amazing feathers. And that's the edge that goes towards the direction that the bird is flying. I'm just making sure that I get this right. And this sort of longer edge in the opposite direction. Now what I want to do is put this under the microscope, and I want to show you how the barbs, barbules and the barbicels stick together. So let me focus in properly so that VM doesn't have quite such a black screen to look at. There we go. Now that there is a barb. Now the barb is the individual filament that you can see on the feather. So when you pick up a feather and you pull it apart, you pull those filaments apart, you know, or most of you will know how they stick together a little bit like Velcro. Now if you look carefully there, you can see the little hooks. Can you see those little hooks there? Those little hooks are exactly like Velcro, and they help to stick the barbs of the feather together. Those are called barbules, and on those hooks themselves are even more hooks, even smaller ones, called barbicels. And that is how a feather like this sticks together. Now, when you see a bird preening itself, and when a bird preens, what it does is it puts its beak into some oil glands, normally around here, or underneath the tail, they're oil glands. What it does is it runs its beak over these barbs, and it pushes the feathers back together. Now, if you are tremendously patient, you can sort of reconstitute a feather so that it looks almost perfect once you've been through it. And also, if you ever feel a feather like this, you can feel that it is oily, unless it's very old. So the tips of these barbs are very old, and so they're quite dry. But the middle is very oily. And what that does is it waterproofs the bird's feathers, and it also just keeps them in pristine shape. Because, of course, once this feather has grown, once it is at this size, it stops growing and the blood supply to it ceases. So as it's growing, in the end here, you find a whole network of blood vessels that goes in, and I suppose nerves as well, as it grows until it gets to about this side. Then that sort of blood supply is cut off. And because of that, the feather cannot self-repair itself like most of your body will. If you pull a hair out, the hair follicle will repair itself because it has a blood supply and a nerve supply. That does not happen with the feather, and so they have to spend time, birds do, fixing the feathers all the time, putting the little barbs and barbicels and things back together so that when they fly, they don't plummet to the ground and get a very bad headache. Don't you think that's a good idea, Viam?
Definitely not.
Right. We will find some other interesting things to show you, and while we're doing that, let's head back across to Steph, who seems to be slicing something on the bushwalk.
All right, and as I said, I'm going to be busy with this swagger stick for most of this afternoon's bushwalk. But for those of you who are just joining us, my name's Steph, and you're on the afternoon bushwalk here at Safari Live. And what we've got over here, which is quite interesting, is a collection of caterpillars. I'm not quite sure what the collective noun is for them, but have a look at this. There are at least 3, 1, 2, 3, around this particular stick. And they are busy eating this particular plant. You can have a look here as well. On the end of this branch are some more. Now one would imagine that something that looks as angry as this, or as, let's say, alien as this, is trying to tell us something. And I want you to ask yourself the question, what is a worm covered in all of these hairs trying to tell us? I think, for me, at least anyway, a worm that has covered in hairs like this is trying to tell me, please don't eat me or touch me or do anything like that. And that is exactly what these caterpillars are sending, the message that they're sending. Those hairs that they've got all over their body there are very irritant. They will stab into your skin, and there they will lodge, and quite often there's a little venom sac attached to the base of these worms, or a base of their hairs. And what will happen is that you will swell up. I know as a kid I was quite often attacked by these climbing in the trees and bushes where I used to live. Since I can remember, I've been sticking my face into the bushes like I'm doing at the moment, and I distinctly remember an angry little worm like this making me swell up all over the place. What they're going to turn into, I'm not actually sure. I'm actually going to pitch that question straight at James and see if James, with all that plethora of information at his fingertips, could actually find out for you and show you what the moth or what the butterfly is going to look at that is what this will turn into eventually. Obviously, when these have eaten enough vegetable matter and built up enough reserves, they will pupate and use all of that energy to become a moth or a butterfly, flying around using those bright colors and those flappy movements to find a mate. They will mate with one another, lay eggs, and the caterpillars will come again. So that's the cycle that these have got with one another. Don't you find it fantastic? These little poodles. Now sometimes they react to carbon dioxide. These ones don't do it too badly. They get moving a little bit, but not so much. I can actually see here that it looks like one of them has been fed on. I don't quite know what has taken it, but it looks like a little bit of this caterpillar has been left behind on the end of that stick over there. Don't really know what it is. What bush? They're busy eating a milkberry bush. Milkberry bushes are one of James's favorite trees. I think it's actually his favorite tree is the milkberry or the milkwood. Yeah, and that's all I have to say about that basically. I don't know too much more about these particular caterpillars. Let's carry on going. You're right there, Dave.
All good.
Now we've come into this particular area, as I said, because of this drainage line in front of us. And this is one of the most active of the game paths that feed this particular drainage line. And what's going to be quite nice is deciding what animals have walked up and down this path this afternoon. And what we actually have is buffalo. So there's a buffalo track. These two very cow-like tracks here are the cloven hoofs of a buffalo, quite big. This is his back foot. Their front foot is this big round blob of a track, giant of a track. Let's see what else has walked here. We have an impala. That's an impala track. You can see it's very sharp, with that ridge that goes through the middle. Very sharp with a ridge that goes through the middle. And then we have a Nyala track. Let me show you a Nyala track right here. Now Nyala walk or register, come with me this side, this is a much better track. Nyala walk when they walk foot on foot. So their front foot will go down and their back foot will step exactly into where their front foot was. So their front foot lifts up and their back foot steps right there. It's called registering. And the reason why they do that is so that they break fewer twigs and make less noise. And how I know it's a Nyala is you take a little bit of a stick like I've done now and you measure the track. And always with a Nyala, the middle of the track will be the widest part of the track. The shallowest part, or one of the, it'll taper to the end, and you can see there that the back of the track is not as wide as the middle of the track, and that tells me that it's a Nyala. These types of antelope, bushbuck, Nyala, and kudu all share that similar trait. They're just obviously different sizes. A kudu would be bigger, and a bushbuck would be smaller. All right, now that tracking 101. I'm sure James has got something else to tell you in that tent of his. He's full of surprises.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Sunset Safari. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, my name is Jamie and I have Jandre on camera with me this afternoon. Now Jandre, as most of you well know, apart from being something of an accident-prone human being, is also an incredibly good cameraman. Don't tell him I said I told you that. But Jandre is currently experimenting with a new camera, so when things go wrong, it's not due to a lack of skill or anything like that on his part, it's just getting to know a new piece of equipment. And just to let you know, things might be a bit strange every now and again. We are testing it out. And to start off with our Sunset Safari, we've actually got a lovely pair of elephants drinking at the Voyatella Dam. Now I'm not going to go right up close, and I'll tell you why. The guests at the lodge have not yet gone on their afternoon game drive. I don't want to ruin the photographs that they're going to be taking from the veranda of these two magnificent elephants. One very large bull on the right, and one slightly younger, slightly smaller on the left. Those of you who've been watching the Djuma Dam camera, which is a 24-hour webcam that monitors this waterhole, know that this dam is being freshly pumped today, and I think that the elephants are having an absolute field day, enjoying the fresh, clear water that is coming out of that pipe, exactly where they're standing. And behind them, of course, our ubiquitous Peter the Pan hippo, or at least an equivalent, having to tolerate the company of multiple animal species coming to drink. This is a very sad and all too common scene that we've been viewing over the last few months as the drought gets, well, at least the dry season continues, and after a summer or wet season that was particularly dry, there's very little space left for these poor hippopotamus to go. Now, when we last spoke, we were watching a Birmingham boy disappearing off into the darkness on the Sunset Safari, roaring to find the rest of his brothers, and Brent had Tingana sawing right next to the car just because yesterday was an awesome day. So just to update you, since we didn't have a... Oh, shame. Poor hippo. Immediately nervous of that elephant. It's not uncommon for elephant bulls, particularly young elephant bulls, to chase hippo. I think that one's a little bit small. I don't know that he's going to be picking a battle with that hippo. You can really see an age difference there clearly. And that's probably, if I had to guess, kind of difficult to do, but if I had to guess, I'd say there's about maybe 8 or so years between these two elephants in terms of the difference in their size, possibly more. You can see the really young elephant bull, he hasn't quite got the round forehead that the elephant on the right has. Much smaller tusks, much thinner tusks. He's probably, the bull on the left has probably only just removed himself, or in the last few years, been separated from the rest of his herd, as elephant bulls do. He's joined up with a slightly older friend for a bit of company and support. And what is probably, or presumably, quite a scary time in a young male elephant's life. Their days of herd protection are numbered. You can see the little bit of a stain running down the side of the elephant's face, elephant on the right, between his eye and his ear. Now that is a temporal gland that all elephants have, and that secrete liquid down the sides of their face. It can be, in a male elephant, it can be an indicator that they are going into what is a must their lives, where their are to secrete from glands, and at the height of their must cycle they dribble urine as well. In this case though, I don't think he's going into must, not exhibiting any of the other signs, apart from having a great time kicking the water pipe. Bringing up the pipe there. I think there's a chance he's actually going to try and pull that pipe up out of the ground, or just get to it with the end of his trunk so he can suck the fresh water directly from it. Naughty boy, what are you doing? And if we look up a little at his tusks, you'll see the notch, a very clear notch on the left-hand side. Or not, or he'll just turn his head away. Fair enough. I was about to say, you can see that he is left tusk. Chandra, would you like to cough? Chandra is slowly going, Pierce, trying to hold it back. I could just is particularly abrasive to the senses. Now, siphoning off the top layer of water, we just siphoned off the top layer of water to get to the slightly clearer bits on the other side. He's tired of his game. Drinking down trunkfuls. Each of those, each trunk full, which I think the trunk's full system, is very heavy on water consumption. We know that an elephant's digestive system is relatively ineffective, if you could phrase it like that, in that food that they in mouth moment. And that's one of the ways that elephants affectionately greet each other. Actually get a scent of the bull. This is actually a really sweet scene. But we've seen it like when serious around. This is a very gentle nudging out of the way. The nicest try right. He wants. Here we go. Just to back up a little bit, buddy. It's my turn now. Teaching him some adult manners. And some incredible change. A sword, cold. At the same time they drink. We're going to leave these Ellie balls for now and start heading back to a special surprise for your afternoon. While we do that, let's hop just a few meters away up to James in the tent on quarantine clearings.
Hello again, everybody. Not a special surprise just yet, but there's going to be a special surprise. You will notice upon my desk a special controller. This is not for some fighter jet, although I feel like Tom Cruise, the circa 1986 Top Gun. We won't be shooting at anything, though. We'll be driving a rover very sedately and slowly across quarantine clearings and hopefully interacting with the wildlife here from a slightly different angle. But more on that in a little while. Now, that moth, I think, that Steph was looking at, I think, is probably something called a hairy eaglet. But that might be incorrect. That's the closest I can get to. We know that there are hundreds and hundreds of species of moths and butterflies. I'm pretty sure that was a moth. And I have a sort of more extensive butterfly book, which naturally doesn't have any moths in it. Anyway, that's what I think it was. And the adult looks like that, which is basically like a piece of stick. Not so, Vian, wouldn't you say a piece of stick? Or a leaf?
Or a St. Bernard.
Or St. Bernard, yes. A bit smaller?
Not smaller.
Like the size of a St. Bernard's toe, for example. Right, so that's what that was. Then the other thing I wanted to show you here was this little piece of stone. Now, I am willing to bet that many of you have walked in the wilderness and over, on top of, and around pieces of stone like this, which to the untrained eye look like, well, pieces of stone, don't they? It's actually some kind of primitive human tool. Now, it could have been a human being, a Homo sapiens, or it could have been something like Homo habilis, which is a more prehistoric human being, a knuckle dragger, if you like. Oh dear, we'll have to sort that out just now. I'll get Jerry to do it. Geraldine, everything's fallen over here. She'll come and sort that out for us just now. She might need a little bit of cajoling. Anyway, this hand axe, of course, a lot of wind in the tent today. Not a hand axe, a hand tool, would have probably been used to as an arrowhead, probably at some stage, and it may also have just been cut off a much larger tool that a primitive human being would have used. Now, what do you think you would have used something like this for? For me, I think it would have been used probably to cut off the, on fine roots and fine sticks, it probably would have been used to cut off the bark. It probably would have been used to kind of macerate, something like a primitive piece of sugar cane, if you like, to squeeze out the liquid and probably get at some of the pulp inside. So I think that's what something like this would have been used as. I don't think it's quite sharp enough to have been an arrowhead, but possibly was used for that too. And what's interesting is that around this area, we had all sorts of different kinds of hominids. And a hominid, of course, is a primitive human being belonging to our own genus, that's Homo. And Homo habilis, one of the first tool-making hominids around here, and all of them, remember, what distinguishes us and our very close and now extinct ancestors from all the great apes is our bipedalism. We walk on two legs, and we're one of the only few that walk on, well, the only species that are able to walk consistently on two legs. Now, Ermi, you ask a very nice question. BMP, we're going to come down over here. I'm going to retrieve my head torch, and we are going to, well, in fact, you can wait there. I'll bring it to you. You want to know about the gecko in the buffalo skull. Well, here is the skull, and we can have a look and see if the buffalo, or not the buffalo is still here. This buffalo hasn't moved of its own accord for some time now, but we can have a look and see if the gecko is still inside. So VMP, we're going to have to use the screen here. This is VM's first time in the tent, by the way. VM, you enjoying your tent experience so far?
It's okay. Then we get to see the leopards.
Okay, yes, quite. Okay. Now, Ermi, I can, in fact, see the gecko's eggs, but I can't see the gecko. So let me just focus in there. There on the bottom, on the right, left-hand side of your screen, you can see the eggs that have been covered by a piece of leaf. I think that, unfortunately, was during a fall that this buffalo skull had, rather than because the mother has taken the time to cover her eggs in a special little piece of leaf. But there are the eggs, and we're hoping they're going to hatch. Now, what differentiates those, of course, from something like a bird egg is that they are very soft. They've got soft, sort of leathery outside, and they will eventually hatch, hopefully, I think, only in the summer. Now, I'm going to sort of zoom out slowly and give you a sort of 3D view. Okay, so there's a leaf in there, and there is the web, I suspect, of a daddy long-legged spider. And if we keep, I did actually find a daddy long-legs, long dead. There we go, there she is. Look, there she is. She's not dead, you know. I think she's alive. Isn't that cool? Look at her colors, shining copper and brown and gold. Those beautiful markings she has on her perfect legs. And I know those aren't the sort of tones that you would normally describe a spider in, but she is just stunning, isn't she? And I'm always reminded at times like this, when I'm looking at such a spider, I'm reminded of that wonderful book called Charlotte's Web. And Charlotte's Web, a real highlight from my childhood, of course, a kind of first touch, if you like, with the smaller parts of the wilderness, and where spiders are normally described in terms of terror and horror. Charlotte, of course, and her web was a real a wonderful story about, well, a normally fairly scary arachnid. So that's the, so that's the story of the spider and the gecko. Now, Kat, you're in Tampa, and you want to know if that snake behind me is alive. Kat, I'm going to assume that you're being tongue-in-cheek, as it were, because were the snake to be alive, I can assure you that Viam wouldn't be filming anything like as quietly as he is. And, well, there are two snakes here, of course, because this, given its length, see how it flutters beautifully in the wind? Oh, look at that, Viam. Is that like, it's like watching a gymnast in full flight with the, with the ribbons. What do you think this is, Viampi?
Snakeskin.
Yes, it is a snakeskin. Well done. That's a good start. Anybody, do you want to guess what this is? I will tell you after a little while. What I think you should look at, though, is the length. It is a really impressive length snake, and I'll tell you what I think it is in a little while. But let's leave it there for now and have a look at this chap or lady. This is from a place called the Wildlife College. They captured this snake, I think, some time back. I wouldn't take the lid off this jar. This is a python. It's a southern African rock python, and it's a missus. And although in a small sort of honey jar of about, where was it, 10 inches tall, she is actually 1.8 meters. That is about 6'2". She is 6 feet and 2 inches stuffed into this little jar. She's not alive anymore, everybody, so she doesn't mind being in this jar. She died, I'm sure, of natural causes, and she was then collected and placed in formaldehyde, which will make sure that she doesn't rot and start smelling too deeply offensive. Anyway, I'm sorry we don't have a real live one to show you, but it is the middle of winter, of course, and so the best way for us to show you anything snake-like or reptilian is probably in a jar like this. Now, our other feeds are a little bit down at the moment. In fact, they're very down, and so you're stuck with me for now. A question from Gremlins General, if I heard it correctly. You want to know, what do gremlins eat in the wild? Gremlins General, well, I'm not sure if this is a serious question or if you are taking the mickey, as it were. But gremlins General are in fact apocryphal characters from a film that I don't believe to have been based on any kind of fact. Oh, I think you're talking about our tech gremlins, of course, many of which are assailing us as we speak. Now, I think they probably eat copper cabling. They may well also feed on Wi-Fi signal and internet signals. Now, I know that ideally you want to be out on game drive, but that's, oh look, here. Before I show you my next appalling diagram, there is a gymnogene or African harrier hawk flying overhead. That's just to show you that we are in fact in the wild. And you can see how strongly the wind is blowing from the northwest. That bird is now flying due west and quite a lot to the south by mistake. Isn't that amazing? Now, of course, the brain power required to balance in wind like that, and then the navigational skills to be able to tack like a boat tacks in the wind, I think is quite astonishing. It took us many thousands of years to figure out how to do that on the oceans and on the water. But birds like that, of course, have been doing it for many millions of years. Let's have a quick look here. We were talking about those primitive stone tools. And I just want to give you a quick idea of humanity and where we evolved and how we evolved and how we moved around the place. I'm now going to attempt another appalling drawing of a map of Africa. I always get very intimidated when I start these off because I'm so very bad at them. Anyway, this is basically Africa. My proportions are going to be all wrong here. There we go. It does look like a tooth, doesn't it? If there's one thing that it doesn't look like, it's Africa. Something like that. No. Horn of Africa, there we go. Yes. Exactly like Africa, isn't it, VM? Yes, there we go. Anyway, we're in South Africa, somewhere around here. That's us, basically. There's Cape Town, which you've all heard of, I'm sure, before. Okay, and here is the Nile Delta with the Nile. Oh, of course, we've got different colors, so the river should be blue, of course. Now, the Nile is over here. You've all heard of the Nile, mainly because, of course, of the
Egyptians.
Yes, and there?
Pyramids?
Yes, that's a pyramid there. You see that? It's a very good pyramid. Yes.
One thing you got right.
It's the one thing I got right, a small triangle. Anyway, what is important here is that there's this area known as the Red Sea here, and there's a place here called the Isthmus of Suez. Can you say Isthmus? Isthmus of Suez, and that's Arabia down that way. And basically, what happened was, Brent was describing this a little bit today, humanity walked out of a cave just here in the Cape Province, in our current form, just over, just slightly under 200,000 years ago over here. That's where you and VM and I and just about everybody, in fact, every single other person in the world, that is where we trace our common ancestry to. Now, then we walked up this way, and eventually we populated the whole of Africa. And then, about 80,000 years, sometime during the last ice, one of the last ice, it wasn't the last ice age, during a major ice age. This, well, I mean, obviously this is such a disgusting drawing that it's almost nonsensical. But there's the Red Sea, and much like the legends of Moses go, so this sea actually had a land bridge that came across here into Arabia. And from there, people populated the rest of the world. And the last place to be colonized, of course, was the south of South America about 11,000 years ago. Of course, when they left here, they came up into Europe, this away, and eventually they found, over around there in Europe, they found Neanderthals. And you know that some human beings have got Neanderthal DNA in them, we think. So all the other human beings we managed to obliterate. The Neanderthals we obliterated, and we probably interbred with, which I think is a fascinating, fascinating thing. So that's a bit about our history. I think you are still with us, so let's go and have a look at something else in here. Now, Joey, Paul and Charlie, you reckon that this is a black mamba skin. That is precisely what it is, and the only reason we know that, because, I mean, how you could confirm it completely would be to have the head. And of course, when the snake skin, or when the snake walked out of its skin, you would have had the complete head, and on top of the head there would have been a whole heap of different scales that made it identifiable. But we don't have any of those now, you see, and so we have to infer from the size of it. Now, Cameron, you're aged 6 years old, and your wee brother Matty used to love scorpions, I know, and I'm sure wherever he is now, I'm sure he still enjoys scorpions, and you want to know if we have a few scorpions here. Well, Geraldine Kent is finally doing her job. Here we have a couple of scorpions, everybody. Thank you, Jerry. So, Cameron, there you are. Now, these were two. I know that your brother loved Scott very much, and Scott is now in Kenya. And he liked both these two scorpions. He managed to find both of them quite often. And one of them is called a burrowing scorpion. That's the one over here. That's called a pistithalmus. And while he looks very big and scary, he's actually pretty harmless. So he'll give you a bit of a nip like a bee sting. It won't hurt very much. And then this chap's also pretty harmless, and he's a bark scorpion as far as I remember, or Piscicanthus validus. Try and say that, Cameron. It's quite a nice word to say. A Piscicanthus validus. That's what this chap is. And you can see there that he also has a thin tail that is unable to do much damage, but he may well be able to give you a little bit of a nip with those front pincers. But if you're skillful like Scott was, or he continues to be, you can put him in your hand, and you can actually make a scorpion like that go fast asleep. Isn't that amazing? Thank you for that, Cameron. Right, Jamie's back out, and let's go and find out what she's discovered.
Back up and running, and we have hopefully discovered how to fix some of the problems that were sort of reared their heads as we started off our sunset safari. During the process of problem solving the problems, Jean-Andre has now taped a microphone to my hair accidentally, so you know, as long as I don't touch my cap or move it, I should still have hair by the end of the sunset safari, but we'll see how we go. We'll see how we go, Jean-Andre. Oh, in the meantime, I was going to be making my way towards Buffelshoek Dam to follow up on a sighting that we had there this morning. However, it sounds as though those animals, those lions, let's just give it away for now because they have moved off. Sounds as though they've moved into the drainage line system somewhere around there, but we're going to go and check really carefully. This morning we had a Birmingham boy. We actually had two Birmingham boys, but I never saw the second one very clearly. And the one was sort of following the female, like he almost like a sort of a guard that they might, or behavior they might exhibit when the female's going into estrus. They're going into heat. However, she was hugely, heavily, either pregnant or very full, but she had, from what I could see, she had suckle marks around her nipples. So it's one, I think it is one of our lion mothers, new Nkukuma lioness mothers. And I think that the hormones from her pregnancy and from her birth were causing him a slight or a minor degree of confusion. My hat won't stay on my head. We'll stop and have a look at these zebra. One very rotund female that you're looking at now. I think rotund to the point, having just spoken about the lioness and her new cubs, I think this zebra is very heavily pregnant. And look, it's not even symmetrical at this point. She's got the bulge sticking out on her left hand side. She is definitely going to be giving birth at some point in the next few weeks, if not the next few days. Just judging by how uncomfortable she looks. Actually, you can see veins prominent around the belly as well. Hey, I wonder if we could see it move. not impossible. I've seen it before with pregnant zebra, where you can see the foal kicking inside the mother. You can see she's been rolling in the dust, or at least been around while dust's been billowing about her. She's kind of a black, white and sandy brown color at the same time. And zebra love a good roll in the dust. It's one of their favorite things to do. We also have the usual cohort of oxpeckers. In this case, the red-billed oxpecker, so the more common of the two oxpecker species. A bird that is specifically adapted for exactly, over the top and gone, exactly what that one was doing, which is eating ticks and various parasites off the animals that they sit on. You can see she's munching away on the dried grass, and you have to wonder how on earth they manage to find any nutrition in what their diet currently consists of. Zebra are strictly grazers. They might eat the odd leaf every now and again. Oh my goodness, look how round she looks. Shame. She looks like she's going to give birth at any moment. Of course, we had that extraordinary, I say we, James and Dave had the most extraordinary experience where they witnessed a zebra birth live, which is something I could only dream of. Absolutely incredible. But you never know, we might be due another one, because this female certainly doesn't look like she's going to be wanting to cover any large distances anytime soon. A nice little example here of the red-billed oxpecker family. The two adults, they're bright red bills, and I'm not sure if you noticed, but there's also a juvenile. I was saying shame, I mean, I'm sure she's absolutely fine. She just looks so uncomfortable. She looks like a Impala wandering about at the back. And actually, since she's presented us with this view, a nice way of tricky. Okay, let's imagine it would be reasonably tricky if she wasn't so pregnant that her belly is almost touching her knees. But you can, if you look underneath the tail as she swishes it about to swat away, black stripe that runs underneath the tail and down between her legs. That is what tells us it's a female. In the males, there's much thinner. Cat in Tampa, you are absolutely right. This poor female truly does have her work cut out for her. So Cat in Tampa was wondering, isn't it a bit dangerous for a female to give birth to a foal at this time of year, since be okay. The mare would probably be fine, but I agree with you, this is not ideal timing. There's usually a peak of zebra birth all year round, and clearly for this poor female, her timing's gone a little bit off. She's about to give birth at a time where she's really going to struggle to meet her own and her foal's nutritional requirements. Their digestive system is inefficient to a degree, but it works much, much faster than that of, say, a ruminant, say, like an impala or a wildebeest. So what that means is that she can actually process the food faster and meet the Just in case you wanted a good comparison, here's another zebra that is most definitely not pregnant. In fact, I'm relatively certain that this is the father-to-be, an expectant father. Harder to tell, as he hasn't a social structure of zebra, that this mare is his mare, part of his harem, possibly his first and only mare. And he doesn't have to deal with the... He still has to protect her, and zebra stallions do protect their mares very vigorously. Pickers. Oh, he got irritated with those ones though. Really bright, prominent yellow eyes and red bills makes them particularly striking. And those of you who are sharp-eyed and keeping an eye on what's going on behind, the zebra across to the termite mound on the other side. And we've actually got plenty of animal life wandering around this dam. Keep your eyes peeled. A lot of them are now starting to... There we go. There's one running away and one foraging in front of it. Starting to head home for the evening, since it is quite chilly again. As the dwarf mongoose starts to head for home, Andreen has a question concerning the resilience of the skin of the female zebra. So Andreen wants to know, how sort of resilient is it? Will it return to its normal shape, or is it elastic enough to return to its normal shape after the zebra has given birth? Or is there a little bit of sagging involved? I've never seen a zebra with sagging, Andreen, so my guess would be, unless it's a very old female, my guess would be that for the most part they return to their slender figures, well, relatively slender figures, as you know. Zebra would be right. Some of the pregnancies, and maybe also a couple of very large males, that as she's grown older, Karula being the female leopard, the queen of Juma in this area, as she's got older, I think that her can see it that is with them. So maybe Andreen with an older zebra female, she might be a bit distorted. And it's all happening around the waterhole. So we've just had on drink. Stopped. You see that head up look, so big and scary look, and thought about it ever so briefly. He thought about running after it, just showing everybody around the waterhole who is boss. Is our bull from the gentleman that we started our sunset safari with. He's got exactly the same notch in his tusk. Back. The reason elephants chase smaller animals is a little actual reason to do it. Because they do have blind spots right underneath their trunk and in front of their face, and I think the sort of the rapid movement unnerves them. But I also think they just quite like, every now and again, since they are bigger than absolutely everything else out here, I think they quite enjoy the odd chase, particularly the males. I think it makes them feel very important and very large and very manly, or at least in elephant terms. He's gone back for another drink. Oh, And since we're doing a safari, accelerated safari, there is also a giraffe that is about to, oh, I think he's just stopped behind the trees to feed. Well, we don't need to move at all, Jandre. We can stay here for the duration of the sunset safari, except for the fact that the giraffe actually has hidden himself behind the trees. Nope, no, here he comes. To the right of the dead tree, on the other side of the dam, is a big male giraffe playing peekaboo from behind the guari bushes. And as we continue on our crash course safari, apparently our stream has been playing up a little bit. As you know, all kinds of amazing things that are involved in bringing you a live safari from the center of the African bushveld. What that means is that we are aware of the problem and that our tech team is working on it to get it up and sorted as quickly as possible. Thank you to all of you who let us know about that particular problem. Here he comes. I think he might also be thinking about coming for a drink. There's not really any other reason for him to come across in this direction. Giving a couple of sideways glances to the elephant, and I think deciding it might just be worth waiting for them to finish up before he goes to have a drink. Our giraffe is another animal like the zebra and the buffalo that we see regularly on these drives that has, or does have, always have oxpeckers fluttering about it. And Sandy, you were wondering why we seem to have such a huge population of ticks. Well, there's lots for them to feed on, to be honest. I think that's probably the best answer that I can give you. There's so much access to food, from anything from a scrub hare, which will be a host, or the dwarf mongoose we were looking at earlier, which will be hosts to some of the smaller tick species, and then something even larger, like a giraffe. There's so much in the way of resources, and for the most part they don't really do serious harm to the animal. It's just one of those realities that they have to live with, and it does sort of provide for an entire ecosystem, because the oxpeckers would not really exist without the amount of ticks that we have, or certainly the number of oxpeckers that we have. Giraffe and the elephant sizing each other up, and there we go. Ah, sorry. As the elephant bull walks off, I think that giraffe actually got really excited that he was going to have his opportunity to drink, and he's looking wistfully. He started racing towards, or at least walking with purpose towards the water, and then all of a sudden realized that there was in fact a second elephant and that he's still going to have to wait his turn. Sorry, boy. Making sure that the elephant is far away. Well, I think it's time for us to make good on our promise to go and search for those lions, and while we do, James has something incredibly exciting for you up his sleeve.
Well, the incredible thing that I have for you is my echoing voice, and of course not only those skulls. Now, behold, I am now going to drive the rover forward. There is the creator of the rover himself sitting there, and now I'm going forward again. There's Connor, there's Peter Braat in his car, and I'm now going to attempt to drive this thing into here. Goodbye. Yes, hello Graham. I'm going to turn it. There we go. No, too far. I'm not very good at this yet, am I? Here we go. It's coming towards us, everybody. All right, Viam is about to emerge. Here it is. There's Viam, everyone. You can see him there. And I shall now drive it towards him. Now the whole point of this rather fancy little machine, of course, is that we're going to be putting it hopefully at the waterhole and getting some really nice, interesting sort of stuff of different angles of animals. And look, I mean, I've no doubt that there will be some form of interaction with those animals. We'll turn it round quickly. Oh dear, it's picking up your cable, Vim. You might have to move that. And we don't want to have any effect on the animals. Of course, we want to be as sort of neutral as possible. I've no doubt that one or two of them will react to it, but hopefully not in a negative manner. So now let's drive it out here. The first animal we'll see, of course, is a primate. And he's just over there sitting by the fireside, scratching himself, of course. And we'll just turn it a little bit. There, of course, is my easel. And we won't be showing any of the drawings there, mainly because they're not worth looking at. Now let's take a little drive down. We'll see how far the range goes. I'll just get past these logs. That's it. And let's see where we go. So Jamie is off towards us now. Oops, that's the wrong way. I'm going to drive into a hole. That was close. And everybody, now just to keep you posted, everyone is scuttling around, trying to stay out of shot at the moment. And there it is, going across quarantine clearing. So now, with any luck, very soon we will be able to go to, say, a dwarf mongoose nest and or burrow and just, you know, put the thing outside and let them interact with it. And hopefully they will just ignore it eventually. Wonderful. Are those and things? I'm not pick of those sort of pieces of tech or tech numbers down below. No audio. No audio. All right, I think we ran out of range there. Now, there we are. You can see how far away we've come. Let's drive into the setting sun. Oh, now I can't see it. Hang on. Oh, there we go. Every time the angle changes, all I can see is my own face, which of course is not very helpful if you're trying to drive one of these. There's Geraldine. Wave, Jerry. Connor on the right. Peter Bratt on the left. And these are the technical people who put this thing together. Now, I've got to tell you, putting this thing together was not easy at all. It was a very difficult process, and I think it's just marvellous. I can't wait to put this down where there are going to be some animals. I think we're going to have some incredible things. And Deborah, you say it's a very cute robot. It is quite a cute robot, isn't it? Brent is convinced that we should put a giant fiberglass tortoise shell over the top of it. I'm not sure that... Oh dear, we've frozen. Hang on. Frozen screen. Yeah, frozen screen. Lost the rover feed. Never mind, doesn't matter. It works. And it's so exciting because it works in real time as well. So, I think what we'll probably try and do, probably almost immediately, is take it down and see if we can't go to the waterhole where there is a giraffe as we speak. There it is. It is not looking at the rover. It is now head high, of course, with the waterhole camera, with all of its oxpeckers. Oh, and the zoomy is doing a spectacular job of zooming out. Oh, not... There we go. Right, and back to us. So, that's the story of the rover. I'll just drive it a little bit forward so we have it in shot there. Oh, there we got our feedback. Wonderful. Now, one thing I did want to show you, because we don't often see this in the wild, of course, is the fact that we have many different chelonid species, many, meaning 4, and these are the 3, or these are 3 of the chelonid species that we get. Now, chelonid is a shelled reptile, of course, and these are 3 different ones. And I know that you hear us mention them very often, but you don't often see the difference between them sitting next to each other. This, the most common, a leopard tortoise, and we see them very commonly after any smattering of rain that comes down onto the earth here. Those tortoises come out, much rounder than its cousin over here, the Speke's hinged tortoise. Now the Speke's hinged tortoise would indicate that there must be some form of hinging mechanism, and indeed there is. If you look over here, on the back of this tortoise shell, it has a hinge. That's what that flesh is there, and it's able to close up. And because this tortoise is, well, deader than the proverbial doorknob and has been in tortoise heaven for some time, it doesn't move anymore. But there's a little hinge here that allows this tortoise to close up the gap. And unlike its cousin here, the leopard tortoise, which is unable to do that, you can see there, it's almost, I think this is what it is, a modified scale. You can see here, this scale is totally hard in the leopard tortoise. In the hinged tortoise, it's softened and just allows the tortoise to squeeze up there. So those are the two land-based chelonids, and I know that many people, especially in the United States, tend to refer to all of these things as turtles. They ain't turtles here. Tortoise and terrapin for the freshwater. Turtles we refer to as the chelonids that occur in the sea. But the big thing about this is called a serrated hinged terrapin. And there is the serrations. That's why it's called serrated. It's also got a spider living on it, I see that. And it's called a hinged terrapin because it too has a hinge, but its hinge is in the front of the plastron here, and that's where the hinge is, just there. It's able to close that section up. It's not a particularly well preserved specimen, this, but it'll do the trick. Let's go and find out what young Jamie Patterson is up to right now.
Young Jamie Patterson is on her way to see if we can't figure out exactly where those lions went. Apparently they moved a bit further to the west from where we last saw them. And it's time for us to start unraveling the mystery of what's going on with these lionesses and whether or not one of them is in fact denning on Djuma itself, or if she has moved towards Buffelshoek. I'm so confused now in terms of which lionesses. I know Amber Eyes is not pregnant, or if she is, it's very early stages, and I know that the now young adult female is definitely not pregnant because Brent saw her trying to mate with one of the males a couple of days ago. There's one confirmed that has a den site in Torchwood, which is the property to the east of us, and the other has been moving around this area pretty much for the last 10 or so days. I'm going to try and figure out exactly if it was the lioness that I saw this morning, the one with the 2 dots on her nose, or if she is the mother that is denning in Torchwood. So it all gets very confusing, and don't worry if you can't understand what I'm saying, if I'm speaking gibberish. It will all become clear over the next few weeks, I imagine, as we start to learn more about the lion dynamics. Now, before I venture too far up Hyena Road, which is always a bit of a tricky one to drive, I think perhaps let's go this way, and then I'll check Nyala Road North after that. It just looks as though that, from judging by the fresh tire tracks, somebody has already driven through here to check this road. Sorry guys, I just want to try and get that message again on the Game Drive channel. I couldn't hear what they were saying. I'll wait for a good opportunity for when the conversation finishes. Oh, you can see why I say that Hyena Road can see why this road is known as probably one of the least enjoyable to drive. Let me just show you the hole that is in the road in front of us. It's sort of part of a seep line. A place where the elephants have been digging and clearing up bits of mud. And a very warm welcome to Saltnade, who was wondering if this is a pre-recorded show or an exclusive once-off live broadcast. Just checking that John is still at the back of the vehicle. Well, I have wonderful news for you. It is not pre-recorded, it is 100% live, which is incredible when you think about where we are broadcasting from, right here in the Kruger National Park in the Sabi Sand, to be exact, and to be even more exact, on Juma, Arathusa and Cheetah Plains game reserves. So that is where we are at the moment in the world, and we are coming to you live. The even better news is that it is not exclusive at all. In fact, we do this twice a day, every single day, for 3 hours in the morning on the sunrise safari and 3 hours in our evening on the sunset safari. We've been rehearsing for some exciting planned television appearances that will occur in the United States over the coming weekend. But yes, absolutely, it is 100% live. And what that means in terms of the implication is that unlike other documentaries that are not necessarily not reflective of the truth, but are edited and sort of the story is told for you, for us out here, we can't edit anything, we certainly cannot script anything, and it's up to the animals to decide where the stories go and what happens. What that means is that from day to day and from drive to drive, it remains completely unpredictable. And you've been playing with new technology up with James in the tent. We've also got some new technology that we're going to be testing a bit later, which will involve infrared and filming in the dark. And let us see how that goes. And while I concentrate on searching for these lions and see where they've or try and work out where they've gone, back across to James and find out what he's up to.
Of course, the rover doesn't really go quite as fast as an F-15, but we're attempting, you know, we can always pretend. It's out there, and we're hoping to drive it on a little voyage of discovery, but we seem to be having a small problem. Never mind, we have two relatively capable human beings charging out to fix it. There we go. Yeah, give us a wave, Graham. Give us a wave. There we are. And there's Connor as well. Wonderful. Connor loves nothing more than to be on camera. And of course, you know, with these new pieces of technology, there we have a wonderful picture from the rover of Connor's left foot. Careful there, there was sun shining. You've all heard the term, some people think that the sun shines out of their bottoms. Well, it would appear that the sun does indeed shine out of Connor's bottom. Well done, Connor. Shall I try? Oh no, we seem to have lost our feed.
Yeah, no, we're rebooting it.
Rebooting the rover. Okay, let's have a look at something else while the rover is rebooting. Of course, for those of you who don't know, we're in this tent, of course, because we're doing these 2 Father's Day TV specials on Nat Geo Wild very soon, in the next few days, on Saturday and Sunday. So if you are in the US, the first 2 hours of the afternoon safari on Saturday and Sunday will be broadcast live to Nat Geo Wild, and of course we will be in the tent and we'll have 2 walks out, no, 1 walk and 2 drives out, which will be fantastic. Now what I wanted to show you here is this thing, which will be familiar to just about everybody all over the world. It is a wasp's nest, and the wasp's nest, these are the, what are they called, the Vespidae wasps, and what they do is that they chew up wood, mix the wood with saliva, make this pulp, and then they make these nests. And they're the only truly social wasps, and they are also the wasps that are known as hornets. And we all know what hornets do, don't we, use the VM? What do they do?
Sting?
They puck you, yes, they sting you, and it is very, very painful to be set upon by these wasps. But this is quite a nice example of a paper wasp, or something similar. Now let's just get a quick update. No, we still don't have the robot going. And an interesting question, it's now moving apparently of its own accord, which is astounding. It has developed a mind entirely of its own, which is disturbing as much as it is enthralling. Mia, you say, would the hyenas not steal it? No, the hyenas won't steal it, and I'll tell you why. They may come and investigate it, they may give it a sniff, but their nasal cavities are such that anything they want to eat, they will be able to smell. That will smell like not food, and so they might give it a perfunctory bite, which of course in the case of a hyena would destroy it, but it's highly unlikely that they'd pick it up and then drag it off somewhere else unless it smelt like food, which it almost certainly doesn't. Shall we give it a go?
But it's still not getting the video.
We still don't have a picture, but it is moving. Viam, can you see it moving? There we go. It's just going past some dung. And we're rather hoping that the picture will come up. Well, there we can see it, because we're on an adventure with the rover. We're hoping to find something that is hidden. And I'll show you what's hidden. If you turn around to your left-hand side, you will be able to see what is hidden. Geraldine? Remember, Geraldine has been very slack today, so I stole a shoe of hers. I stole her shoe, and we've hidden it. Now, the rover is off to try and find Geraldine's shoe, but at the moment it doesn't look like we're going to be able to find it at all. Yes, Sean, I must confess, I have the Mission Impossible theme song going through my head as well. Dim 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 dim. Of course, it is very much Mission Impossible at the moment. I'm not going to hold. Oh, we're picture up. We're picture up. Here we go. And we're moving. There we go. Oh no, it's going the other way. Let me turn it round somewhat. There we are. Okay, and now which way is forward? There we go. No, I'm still going backwards. That's an absolute disaster. We're never going to find Jerry's shoes at this stage. There we go. It's turning round. You can see it going. Right, now we'll go and find Jerry's shoe. Yes. Now, here we can see a termite mound. Viam, do you think that there might be Jerry's shoe behind that termite mound?
I don't know.
It's now stopped moving. Oh dear. And we've lost picture, and it's not moving. What I think I'm going to do is take this hand axe over here. And what we're going to do with a hand axe is attempt to fix this through the medium of a blunted and very large rock. No, that didn't seem to work. Oh well. Teething problems, everyone. At least it isn't a drone, and at least it hasn't then come plummeting out of the sky. I wonder what else we can find you to have a look at here. We just hope this doesn't happen on TV time. Let's have a look here. Here we have a rather spectacular nest. Now look at the detail and intricacy of this quite fantastic nest. Isn't that amazing? It's a chin spot battis nest. And while vultures and birds like that have to grow up on horribly uncomfortable sort of spiky, thorny branches, the baby battis gets to grow up on a little nest like this, covered in lichens for softness, spider web in the middle for softness as well, and the most intricate form of weaving, which I just think is absolutely incredible. And were I a small bird to be born into a safe nest like this with your mum sitting on top of you for warmth, well, I think it would be a wonderful place to be born. Rather, of course, than on a vulture's nest where your bottom will be spiked by knob thorns until you have sufficient feathers to avoid that. Let's head across to Jamie Patterson. She's driving about hoping to find the lions.
I certainly hope I'm going to be finding lions. We're heading across to where I last had them to see if perhaps our lion tracks won't give us an indication as to exactly where they decided to walk off. Which was interesting this morning was that the pregnant female, or the female that's already given birth, was constantly restless. She got up about 3 times to urinate in the 2 hours that we were with her, which sort of is what made me wonder that she's not still pregnant rather than suckling young cubs, but I'm not 100% sure. That's why I would really like to find them again and figure out exactly what's going on. One thing I definitely know is that the male would absolutely not leave her side and kept growling at the amber-eyed female every time she came too close to them. Let's go and investigate. See if we can't figure out exactly where they went. When we started off our morning, they were on the northern boundary of Djuma. They started moving south towards Buffelshoek Dam. One male disappeared off into this block on my right, and I never saw him again, although I think he was just lying up in the shade somewhere. But I think that the restless female might have led them all off in a different direction. Let's see if we can't figure out exactly where it is they've gone. And a very good afternoon to Laura in Pennsylvania. Sorry Laura, I'm not avoiding eye contact with you. I'm just trying to make sure I don't go driving past a lion lying up in the shade somewhere. And you've mentioned that you know that we do a scat collection project for Panthera with leopard scat, leopard feces. And you were wondering if we do the same things for lions. Now, we do the leopard scat project. We collect the leopard scat, we give it to an organization known as Panthera, which is a worldwide big cat research and sort of monitoring organization. Sorry, Laura, I'm just trying to have a look carefully around here. It seems as though the work for today has been stopped at Buffelshoek Dam, and we can go and have a look at what is happening here while I answer your question. So Laura, as far as I know, well, I know that we don't collect the lion scat here, but we do collect the leopard scat, and I don't think they've started running a project just yet in terms of analyzing lion DNA. So the reason that we collect the leopard DNA is in order to analyze the genetics of the various leopards of this area, and in particular the paternity of each leopard, because it's very, very difficult, it's really tricky to gauge exactly which leopard is the father of which cubs. That's because, as a survival technique, female leopards will mate with as many of the big males in the area as she possibly can. Interestingly enough, they have done some research of a similar nature into lions, and it looks as though possibly as little as 50% of the cubs are actually fathered by the dominant males in the area, the dominant male lions. And that might be just because the female lions do exactly the same thing as the female leopards, which is, again, mate with as many males as they possibly can, even if it's just a nomadic male or an intruder coming to sniff around the area, just in terms of increasing their chances that that male will not then try to kill their cubs. All is quiet at Buffelshoek Dam, apart from 2 very relaxed buffalo bulls. I don't think they would be as relaxed if the lions were still about. And unfortunately, given the amount of traffic at Buffelshoek Dam at the present moment, looking for tracks is going to be relatively difficult. I think it's safe to say, though, that they wouldn't have come through in this direction. We'll have to start searching a little bit further afield. Perhaps they crossed further north. These buffaloes enjoying a late afternoon drink and wallow. The temperature has dropped dramatically all of a sudden since we first started our sunset safari. I think at this point they're probably going to try and find themselves a nice patch of sun to lie in, rather than trying to cool off in the mud of Buffelshoek Dam. And speaking of mud in Buffelshoek Dam, starting to see islands appearing in the middle, which means it's slowly drying up once again. A couple of months ago, this dam, this waterhole, was completely dry. Even the mud had started to crack and dry up, and we're making our way towards that. My guess would be that this dam, depending on temperatures, is probably going to be dry by, where are we? We're in the middle of June, maybe by the middle of July, if indeed it makes it that far. There you go. Get an idea of just how shallow the water actually is. Otherwise, exceptionally quiet here. Let's continue on. I want to see if these lines didn't go south towards... Let me try and think this through. I'm trying to work out where it would be most likely that they would go. I'm sort of hedging my bets on south, but it is entirely a guess. It will take us through a low signal area, so while we do that and continue our search, let's head back to James in the tent and an interesting view of the hippo.
Now, I'm afraid the hippo view is gone, but we do have the rover back, everybody, and it seems to be in a functional state. Let's go and see if we can find Jerry's shoe. You can see the rover is definitely not quite as speedy as an F-15, but it is very sturdy. It's sort of slow and steady, like the tortoise, of course, from that immortal story, The Tortoise and the Hare. Marvellous picture there, the setting sun to the west. I think that's just beautiful. I really do think that's amazing. Isn't that lovely? Framed by the tree, the grasses being mowed down. Not really being mowed down, this, you've seen how tiny this little thing is. And some of those last flowers that we're going past, they're called Waltheria, the very last flowers that there are at the moment. Now, Ruth, Ruth, you say, are we not concerned that a buffalo or elephant might stand on the Ricky the Rover? I think that's quite a nice name for our rover. Thank you for that, Ruth. I'm not sure we shouldn't call it Ruth the Rover, because all of our other technical equipment is known by male names, so I think Ruth the Rover is a really nice idea. So we are slightly concerned of that, and indeed it has happened. We had an elephant kick it by mistake the other day, and yes, it certainly could happen. It's quite a robust design, and so we're hoping that it won't make too much difference. Now, look out, everybody. Look out carefully. Oh, I think I see something. Jerry, I think I see something. Let's go a little bit forward there. Oh, wow. I'll laugh my head off if the thing isn't around here. I did place it there, of course. Ah, look at that. Look at that, everybody. There's Geraldine's boot. Let's run it over. Hang on. Turn him round slightly. All right, here we go. Let's mow that thing down. Here we go. Watch this. That's it. There we go. Straight over the top. Well, well done. And it seems that there's Jerry's shoe. The rover has stopped moving. I may have broken it. I can still see it, but it is not mobile anymore. Anyway, that was a fantastic adventure. We went on to run over Geraldine's shoe. The rover is not very heavy. I don't think it damaged the shoe at all. Right, we have a wonderful view now of the waterhole. The Zoomy is doing a fantastic job of showing us the hippopotamus. Let's go and have a look-see. Now you see, as the drought persists, oh dear, there's a bit of wind blowing the camera. You're likely to get seasick looking at that. Anyway, let's hope you don't. That hippo is probably not in a great way, and remember we had a hippo that came into this area a little while back, and we called it Peter from Pete's Pan, and we didn't think he was looked very good at all, and I don't think this one looks particularly healthy. And of course, as we had discussed many times during the sort of height of the summer and the drought that we had then, we discussed how a hippo would be looking for, or having, here it is, Geraldine's removed my crocodile again. Sorry, a second here. We discussed how the habitat for these hippo is suboptimal at the moment, because as the water's drying out, the young bulls, like that one is, I think it's probably a young bull, are really going to struggle to find appropriate habitat, deep water that they can get into. Now, Kenneth, you want to know if we get crocodiles here? Well, in the tent we do. In the tent we have a young baby crocodile that was found some time back, clearly. It is well dead, as you can see. But this is a baby crocodile, probably only maybe about a month old. They grow very slowly, but probably about a month old, this crocodile, when it met its end. And we don't find many of them on Djuma. And that's because there isn't a perennial river running through this area. There is the Great Mulwati drainage line, of course, but that is not a perennial river. It will only flow after a serious deluge, and probably only for a few minutes after that. But down south of us is, sorry, there seems to be some major things going on around here. Going down south of us, about 7 kilometers away, we have the Sand River, and in the Sand River there are many crocodiles. You wouldn't want to go swimming there, but you also wouldn't go swimming in any of the dams. Now, you've just been at Buffelshoek Dam with Jamie, and at that dam you will find that there are no crocodiles now, but you never know when one might arrive, and they can move up to 50 kilometers in a night. So one morning there won't be a crocodile, and by the evening there could be one. So it's never a good idea to go swimming in any African water unless it has a very good fence around it. Let's head across to Jamie. She's got some pigs.
Forgot to take my foot off the brake, sorry.
This rover's got legs.
It's cool, yeah. Oh, we're still live. Jamie's got no comms. We're still live, everybody. Sorry about that. Panic. Okay, I'm out of my panic mode. But I can show you a warthog. Oh, we now have comms with Jamie. No, we don't have comms with Jamie. Kirsten, what the devil are you doing in the final control? Here we have 2 pigs, everybody. One boar, the big one, and one sow, the little one. And now you can see how, as with human beings, the sow managed to keep her teeth much cleaner than the boar did. He, of course, was very tardy about his appearance. This actually could be likened, I suppose, to Brent and Jamie. One, you know, magnificent. The other, impressive, but not quite as sort of clean as its partner. Let's go straight across to Jamie.
Look at what we have here. First of all, signal on Inyala Road North, which is impressive all in itself. And second of all, a pair of snuffling warthog. And they've given us the perfect opportunity to actually compare the size difference between a male and a female. Now, it's the male that is wandering about on the left, and he is absolutely enormous. A fully grown warthog boar, with those wart-like protrusions that give the warthog its name. They are, in fact, of course, gristle and connective tissue and cartilage. And you can see just how prominent they are on a fully grown male warthog. And he's actually got one of the most impressive set of tusks that I have seen on Djuma. They're absolutely enormous. Those, of course, are generally used for digging up roots and other such things, and in fighting with other male warthogs. But his most impressive tusks are actually the lower set, or the tushes, that are rubbed razor sharp, much sharper and much more dangerous than the top set. A male warthog like this, of this size, would be enough to think, even to make even the bravest leopard think twice about tackling him. Not defenseless by any means. Even a leopard of Tingana's stature and size would probably weigh just a little bit more than this warthog himself, and probably wouldn't want to risk injury by attacking him. Interesting amount of moisture around his eyes as well. I don't know if that's moisture or if it's just sort of bald skin around that patch. Here we go, giving you a brief view of his lower tusks. It's all right, boy. He is a most impressive specimen. I know that a lot of people think of them as incredibly ugly. I really don't see them that way. And they might not be as attractive as a lion or a leopard, or even a zebra, or indeed most of our mammal species, but they're not hideous. I actually really enjoy warthog. They are such characters. Most of us in South Africa have grown up with warthog wandering about campsites, at least, being a very familiar sight. They habituate to people very quickly. One particular memory springs to mind when one of them tossed my brother into the air when he was still very, very young. He was a baby, he was still in nappies. And a female warthog walked up behind him and threw him into the air. And he's been absolutely terrified of warthog ever since, and indeed is in fact terrified of most living things that are any larger than the size of a pinhead, particularly spiders. Strange how two different siblings turn out very different ways. It's the female snuffling about at the back. She's much smaller than he is, not necessarily in terms of physical size, and her tusks are relatively impressive. You can see she completely lacks the protrusions that he has. She's only got two small ones underneath her eyes, one on each side, and that is one of the most easily distinguishable features in terms of telling the difference between a male and a female warthog. Females only have 2 warts, whilst the males have 4. 2 underneath the eyes like the females, and then 2 closer towards the snout. And again, like the zebra that we saw earlier, snuffling and eking out their existence, or whatever they can find at this point. The difference is that their digestive system is slightly more resilient than that of a zebra, in that they can cope with different types of food, including roots and shoots and tubers, and even occasionally meat from carcasses. It's not uncommon for a warthog to scavenge off a carcass, or in fact most of the animals out here. Even antelope will have the odd nibble to supplement their protein requirements. With her long flowing blonde mane, she might not be a lion in stature, but just as interesting. As that member of the porcine family wanders off up the drainage line, our beard, you were wondering whether or not we have bush pig in the Sabi Sands and what the difference is. We do indeed have bush pig out here. I have yet to see them while I've been on Djuma. I'm not sure how many have ever been seen on the live drives, but I'm sure at least one of them has been seen, I imagine. The terrain is not necessarily exactly right for a bush pig, but they will be around. They're just exceptionally nocturnal and really rather shy. And our beard, the difference is a bush pig is much more like a wild boar or a wild hog. Much larger, much stockier animal with smaller tusks. It doesn't have those curving facing tusks that a warthog has, and it's actually quite shaggy, as in furry. That being said, it's also almost totally nocturnal. It's also apparently, I mean, it's one of those things that always makes you wonder, because we've got very strange perceptions of some of the animals out here. In theory, it is more aggressive than the warthog. I've one friend who's been chased up a tree by a bush pig that he disturbed whilst he was setting out to fix a pump around a waterhole. So it does happen. They can be apparently quite aggressive. I don't necessarily think any more so than the warthog, but they are bigger, and I suppose perhaps that makes them a little bit scarier. Now, bush pig, seeing one of those on our live drives is something that would make me incredibly excited. It's something on the list for us, or I think most of us, to tick off. But since our current members of, or diurnal members of the pig family have moved off, I think we should carry on. Now, Lynn, it's a strange thing that you, a very valid point, a very strange answer to your question. You were wondering if warthogs are ever poached for their tusks. That's a really, really good point, because as you know, just like the elephants, warthogs' tusks are modified teeth, unlike hippo as well. Yet for some reason, the traditional ivory poaching is far more geared towards elephant tusks, with slightly less concern around warthog or hippo. And it is, as far as I know, it is okay to sort of, maybe it's not actually, now that I think about it, but I have heard of people selling warthog tusks off. Now we, of course, even if we found a warthog skull here, and I know that there is one in the tent with James, even if we were to find a warthog tusk, we would never be able to take it out of the reserve. Everything that is found here stays here. But it is an interesting point that you make. It's one of those strange perceptions of the human mind that elephant ivory is automatically better than a warthog's tusk. And maybe in terms of the quality of it, or the condition, or the color, perhaps it is thought to be that way. But luckily for the warthogs, they aren't generally poached. The much more common problem with warthog poaching would be for bushmeat. It's luckily not something that we encounter here in this incredibly well protected and well preserved area. I might lose you through this dip. We've done very well on Inyala Road North so far. Inyala Road North has always been one of the signal black holes, so this we might lose you a little bit. It is unfortunate though, because it's my favorite road on Djuma. Really incredibly pretty down here. Let's try and make it through this dip quickly and look for the lions at the same time. And we have some wonderful news. I'm sure many of you were wondering where Steph has been. Well, you don't need to concern yourself, for he is back out and walking with Dazzling Dave and Herbert. Let's find out where they are and what they're up to.
Well, yes, it's exactly. We have fixed the backpack, so it seems the wonderful tech geniuses that is Peter and Eugene have been playing on the pack, and we have managed to finish my swagger stick, or my baton, as you can see over here. This was that piece of wood that you saw me playing with when I started the show. I've now made my knife extremely blunt, and I've given myself 1 or 2 blisters on my hands as well, not to mention making myself bleed, cutting my finger over there. So it hasn't been without a violent sort of upbringing, my stick, but as you can see there, very comfortable. Now, many of you will be asking, why on earth would I want a stick like this? One is because I was feeling a bit out. Brent and James both have sticks. Obviously, Brent has the biggest stick. James was given a very small stick by Brent, and no one wanted to give me a stick, so I thought I'd cut my own. And the stick I did have, I've given to Herbert. So Herbert is now walking around with my stick, the one that takes the bullets, and I was feeling a little bit how do I say, I was feeling a little bit bare before I decided to cut my stick. So now I've got my own, and I can point at things, and I can lift branches up, and I've even given it a spike at the end there to inflict further injury upon myself, because I can't actually tell you why else I have it. Now, one thing I am going to tell you is there's going to be a crashing noise coming past us, and I want to show you what's just happened. There's an empty trailer right there. And of course, you can guess that that was Wendy that was just delivered to us. So we're just busy testing Wendy at the moment. It looks like Wendy has been fixed. She's back on site. We hopefully will be able to put her back together in not no time, but some bit of time, and she'll be driving around again. So good luck to, or well done to the guys that have been working on it. Now, Joey has just asked me all the way from Australia, and wow, Joey, you must be watching it late at night. You've asked me what's my favorite things to see in bushwalk. To be honest with you, Joey, I'm a big fan of the smaller things. I think that spiders and ants and caterpillars and plants and interesting things with lizards and snakes are far, far more interesting than lions and leopards and elephants. Not that I don't love everything, I'm a naturalist of course, and everything here fascinates me. But just how evolved, how super evolved some of these insects are, and how if I blow them up in my imagination to be as big as tigers or as big as honey badgers, I just find that is fantastic. So in my mind, they're the same size, they do the same things, and obviously are much, much more fantastic, for me at least anyway. And that's what makes us such a complementary team, I suppose, is that we can show you all these things. Brent, of course, loves the track and the chase. Jamie is, of course, just her brain size is just unbelievable. James, as you know, is just James Henry, and myself, I quite enjoy everything. All right, so we are now walking around on quarantine, and there in the distance is a light that you can see, and that is where James Henry is sitting, and James Henry wants to give you an update about what he's been up to.
Not a huge amount of update from here. The rover has ceased to function anymore, but Connor is on the problem. I just wanted to quickly show you something here, and this is a wing, of course, and it's superbly drawn, of course. I copied it from an actual diagram by an actual artist. And I just wanted to show you here how basically how a bird's wing works. That there is the humerus of the bird, so that's like the top of your arm, between your shoulder and your elbow. So even though a bird is more distantly related to you than a crocodile, you have the same kind of arrangement of bones. There's the radius, there's the ulna, which are the two bones that are in the front of your forearm, and then basically your carpals and metacarpals, which are very differently shaped here in the birds, go through these 5 bones there. But attached to the bones are the main flight feathers, and these are the primary feathers. And these are the feathers that you see when a bird is flying over your head. Those are the ones that are sort of draped out behind it. And this special feather here is called the allula. And the allula is specifically designed to stop the air, or to reduce the amount of turbulence on the edge of the wing. And that's very important when a bird is flying. Now, everybody, we have a special thing to show you. Making her return to Wild Earth, Wendy. She's had a week-long holiday in Johannesburg, and only very, very sick people go to Johannesburg for a holiday, especially in the wintertime. Driven by Brent Leo Smith, who thinks he is Steve McQueen this afternoon. Thank you, Brent. Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, he says he felt it really pushed his skills. We feel the same thing out here. Now, let's go back into the tent and see what we can find over there. People are scuttling all over the place to get out of the way. Connor, is the rover working? It is. Oh, no, we don't have a picture from it yet, so we're not going to worry about that for now. Let's have a look over here. Now, of course, 2 of the most joyous things you'll ever find in the sun out here are the dung beetles. And these, everybody, you've seen dung beetles rolling their dung balls. Just have a look at those quickly, and I'll find you the actual culprit who made these balls. This, of course, being the dung beetle. Here they are, 2 species of dung beetle. In fact, they're the same species of dung beetle here. There we are, Wimpy. One larger than the other, of course. I'm not for one instant going to try and pretend to you that these 2 dung beetles were rolled by these very 2 beetles. But, oh, they're quite smelly, aren't they? Dung beetles don't only feed on dung, they can feed on carrion. And I remember one once flew in my window and landed on my bed, and I thought, how sweet, and I picked it up, threw it out the window, and then I smelt my hand and had to go and be sick. Anyway, what has happened here is that this particular ball has been eaten out by termites. So I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure in fact, that the egg that was laid inside here by a dung beetle did not make it to fruition. It was eaten out by termites before the dung, or before the beetle could hatch. And so it's very important that what these dung beetles do when they bury their dung is try and get some kind of a hard casing over the top, so that termites and other predators don't get inside and eat the eggs or the grubs when they are born. Now this one, I think, was probably quite a lot more successful, and if we look inside there, which is going to be almost impossible. In fact, you know what? What's this, Spear? You see anything coming out there? Yes, there we go. There we are. You can just sort of see it shining right through there. I think what you'll find here is that the egg hatched inside here, and the grub, or sort of a larva, would have eaten the dung away, eaten it all out of there, and then it would have pupated, turned into a dung beetle, dug its way out, and eventually flown off, much like this particularly spectacular specimen of a dung beetle here. Now Steph has got something more interesting to show you. I think it's the setting sun.
And welcome back to the bushwalk with myself, Steph, and this massive marula tree. I mean, isn't this an absolute beauty? One of the absolute biggest on the property that I've seen is this marula tree. Unfortunately, been quite damaged by an elephant. But the segment I was going to do for you, I'm going to change, which means I'm going to have to ask Dave to walk all the way up here, because I've just found one of my favorite little insects to show you. Here is a pseudo-scorpion. Have a look at that. And as far as I know, the first time we're catching this on live film for you. Pseudo-scorpion. Looks like a scorpion, doesn't have a tail. I don't quite know how many hundreds of million years old this little insect is, but let me tell you, or arachnid is at least anyway, let me tell you that this is one of the most ancient terrestrial insects in the world. Now it looks like a scorpion, and in actual fact, it also hunts like a scorpion. It hunts like a bark scorpion, as you can see with its pincers open. It's combing these bark crevices and valleys and crests for little insects. It eats mites, tree mites. And basically what it does is it catches it with those pincers, and then this is the most unbelievable thing. Its pincers right at the end, right at the terminal point, are silk spinning pincers. And in those in that silk is venom. Can you believe it? So in its pincers, it has the bottom pincer closes to catch insects, and in that bottom pincer, it has silk. And that silk is venomous. Can you believe it? So it catches something, wraps it up in some silk that's venomous, and basically then, where's it gone? Saves it for later. And that's a pretty big one. Have a look. It's a fraction of a millimeter. I mean, there's my index finger. Have a look at that. First time we're catching it on film just for you. It is really, really, really awesome. I get really excited about seeing stuff like this. This is like, it's not quite like finding the coelacanth, of course, but it's around, it's not quite as old as it either. But scorpions are some of the oldest terrestrial organisms, and by terrestrial I mean organisms that can hang around on land, not under the water. And this pseudo scorpion is one of my absolute favorites. Usually nocturnal, but to be quite honest, I think the lack of food this year is driving him out, and potentially also the temperature. He might be hunting now because it is still a little bit warm, whereas it's not that warm later on at night. But we're gonna watch this little pseudo scorpion a little bit longer, but Jamie has got something quite exciting to show you. Off you go.
Oh, well, Steph goes for a bushwalk. We're on our way to investigate the hyena den. Now, some of you might have missed the update about the fact that a couple of days ago I found a female at the entrance to one of the old den sites on Mvubu Road. Now, I was exceptionally excited because she kept sort of walking around the entrance to the hole and then looking down, just like Madam did, the matriarch of the hyena clan, when we first saw her set of twins, the January twins. Now this is exciting news because we actually thought that all of our hyenas had temporarily abandoned us and moved their den site onto a neighboring property called Simbambili. I'm hoping, against hope, that she will be there when we get there, and perhaps today will be the day that we will get the first glimpse of the newest members of the Djuma hyena clan. Quite possibly now the Djuma Simbambili hyena clan, but this is very much the core part of their home range. That is my plans for the evening. I've left where we last saw the lions for now. I'm going to head back there as it starts after dark, depending on what we find at the den and depending on how our infrared works and what we'll be able to view with that. But I think that to be able to see new hyena cubs once more will be tremendously exciting. That is where we are on our way to now, and I'm going to go quite fast just because we are starting to run out of light. And if she's there, wonderful. If she's not, well, we'll keep trying. We will keep hoping. I refuse to give up on our hyena clan just yet. While we race towards the west, we're not the only people looking in that direction. Let's have a look at the sunset from James's point of view.
And as I have said to you many, many times before, one can never get sick of the sight of the setting African sun, or indeed the sun setting anywhere. I think some of the most spectacular sunsets I've had, second of course to the African ones, have been the ones that I've seen in Cornwall, believe it or not, and in one little part of Greece at one stage. But the African one, when you come home here and you smell the winter's dust and feel the gentle air moving in from the northwest, well, I'm just not sure it can be paralleled anywhere in the world. Here we have a Terminalia sericea, or silver clusterleaf branch, and all over it we have termite nests. Now, I don't know precisely what these termites are doing here. There aren't any in this particular piece of it, but what they're doing is they're building some kind of nest here. But the Terminalia bush, and we'll go and look at the big tree over here now, is actually termite resistant. You can make furniture from it, you can make film, at least you can make fence poles from it, and the termites don't eat it. So if you come over here and look, it seems to me that far from eating the wood, they're almost using the tree to get off the ground for some reason. So if we open this up here, there we go, this is a bit more solid than the one I had. There aren't any termites in it now. There's one. One just disappeared down inside there. I'll just try and do it again. No, they're all absconding now at a great speed back down towards the ground. But they're not, you can see here that they've possibly tried to eat a little bit of the way into the bark, but they don't seem to have managed to get at the wood. And Viam, if you can come around here, that would be great. Here is a termite that seems to have died, somehow managed to impale itself on something or other there in the bark. That is the shell of a termite, the exoskeleton. There he is. It was a young soldier, Viam, do you see that? Oh, cut down in the fountain of youth, the young soldier termite. They're not eating this wood, so I don't know what they're doing here. As I've told many of you before, people out here often, when they find these termite mound nests inside the trees like this, they eat the termite mound dirt. Now, have you ever eaten it, Viam? Have I given it to you before?
Yes.
You don't want to have any more, do you?
It wasn't very nice.
No. Now, it's not particularly delicious. But people say this is very, very nutritious to eat this stuff, and I don't really know why. While I get rid of the stuff that's now in my mouth, let's go across to Steph and see what he has to show you.
Look at this. Oh, welcome back to the bushwalk firstly. And look at this apparent carnage that we're seeing from the elephants that have damaged this tree. Now I know it's elephant because of these marks. These are from the tusks of an elephant. An elephant has come here with his tusk, basically dug it into the bark, leveraged off a piece of bark, and then shoveled it in their mouth. They eat the inner bark of the tree, not really the woody part, but this inner bark where the cambium and it is the cambium, where the xylem and the phloem vessels lie. This is where the tree basically transports all its nutrients. And have a look here, here's some right here that have crystallized out. That is the tree's food, and that is what the elephant is after. This crystallized juicy juice that is just been dried up by the sun and crystallized by the sun. But for when I first walked up here, I thought this tree had actually been killed. And although it's lost a great deal of its cambium layer, probably around about an inch or two of its cambium layer, this tree will actually still be able to feed itself. And I know that because not all of it has been taken. If you look sideways onto this tree here, you'll actually see that a lot of this cambium is left over. And this tree will be able to get by. Whether it'll be healthy again is a difficult question to ask, but in actual to answer. But in actual fact, this tree will be able to get by. I have no doubt that this tree will be able to at least make flowers, or at least make flowers to produce pollen next year. This is a male marula tree, unlike the one with the pseudoscorpion, which was a female marula tree. And I'll tell you exactly how I know that. It's because this tree doesn't have any nuts at the bottom of it. No nuts mean it's a male tree. If it had nuts on the floor here, it would be a female tree. Now, Melissa has just asked me, hi Melissa, you just asked me, can a tree protect itself? Absolutely, Melissa, a tree can protect itself. They make thorns. This particular tree doesn't have thorns. But by far and wide, trees protect themselves by producing poisonous compounds. They take nutrients from the ground and mix it with all the sugar and the energy from the sun that they make, and inside the tree themselves they synthesize some of the most virulent poisons that we find on earth today are made by trees and plants and bushes. And that's generally how they protect themselves. They make themselves distasteful, or they make themselves dangerous to eat or to chew and ingest and swallow. Marulas, unfortunately, are just big, and that's how they protect themselves. They get themselves way up into the ground, big woody trees, and that's how they do it, making themselves outsized for everything except elephant, of course. Nice, beautiful marula tree. Okay, it's getting a bit darker now. Now, you know, being out at foot while we're walking around over here can actually be quite dangerous. I mean, to be honest with you, it's something that we have to look out for all the time. We're not just willy-nilly sort of doing our thing here in the bush. We're not walking around in a fenced area. We're not walking around with 100 vehicles all over us. We're not walking around knowing where animals are. We've got to be quite careful out here. And in particular for things like elephant and buffalo, lion and leopard and rhinoceros. But right now, there's not too many of those around. That is because we're walking around on quarantine. Luckily, we can see where we're going. The other one is because while it's getting dark, I don't want to stray too far away from our camp. But to be honest with you, now's not the time to be talking about what I'm going to be doing. It's going to be talking about what you're going to be doing. And you're going to be going to Jamie, who's approaching that hyena den.
As the chill of the evening sets in and I wrap myself in my jacket, a chill of disappointment is also settled in, because for now the hyena den is completely silent and devoid, as far as I can tell, of any life. It's all looking so positive. Her tracks were or at least tracks of a hyena, going up and down Mvubu Road. You can see how the paths close to the den have been freshly scuffed and cleared of leaves. You can see that path that leads from the entrance. That doesn't necessarily mean that she doesn't have cubs, nor does it mean that they are not here. It just means that she is not here at the present time. And of course she cannot be at the den site all of the time, constantly. would be simply impossible, and she has to try and feed herself. Now, the female that I suspect might have cubs, and now I'm really keeping my fingers crossed here. The female that I suspect has cubs is definitely one of the lower ranking females of this clan. The reason I know that is I've seen her being disciplined and almost what we would describe in our human way as being bullied by the matriarch and by Pretty and Corky. A couple of months ago now, she's been quite severely beaten up. Her ears were being pulled, her bottom was being bitten, and I don't think the only time that we have witnessed that before. So she's definitely lower ranking, which means that she's always going to be one of the last to have access to any of the food that the hyenas might scavenge. It means she might even have to travel further afield in order to find herself enough food. The nice thing about brand new hyena cubs, though, is that they need to be fed more regularly than the slightly older ones. So what that means is that she's got to be returning at least once a day to feed the little bundles of joy, if indeed there are any little bundles of joy in that den site itself. Oh, she's there. She is there. Her head just came up. Yay! Yes, yes, yes. This is brilliant. Alright, we're going to reposition to try and get you a different view. She's right in the entrance to the den site itself, which is where Madam always used to sit when she had the new cubs at this den. Now, it did take us several days of patiently waiting before those little cubs finally emerged. And it could be the same with this hyena. But I think the fact that she's here again, in exactly the same place, is exceptionally positive news. Oh, this is so exciting. Something for us to look forward to in the future. Some of you have only been watching for a couple of weeks or maybe even a couple of months, and you haven't had the opportunity just yet to see exactly what a newly born hyena cub looks like. Hello, I see you. I see you. You were being very sneaky. Every time. Oh, there we go. Is this now her? I need to see her ears. She's got very tattered ears. And she's not making it very easy to see if it is her. Little girl, is this you? And Shamsun, if I hadn't seen that she was there, my next step was to do just as you suggested. You've wondered whether we would ever set up cameras at the den site to detect movement. I was thinking about asking Brent really nicely if I could borrow his camera trap. And I might still think about asking him if I can do that. The difficulty is he doesn't have a metal box in which to place it, and putting something at a hyena den like that is asking for trouble. We'd have to put it right up high out of their reach, and it would run the risk of being damaged. Now, there is a way around to that part of the den. We'll have to keep our distance as much as possible, but we'll still be able to maybe get a little bit of a view into the den site, not into the den itself, but just from a different angle. Valeria, you're just saying that we have action and that it's made your day. Well, I'm so thrilled. I have to tell you, it's made mine as well, because the fact that she's here again, I think, doesn't conclusively prove it, but it certainly goes a long way in doing so. She didn't even lift her head when we came in. I had no idea she was there. And that's one of the wonderful things about our hyenas, is that the cubs learn from their mothers and automatically become very relaxed with vehicles incredibly quickly. So while we reposition, let's head back to James on quarantine, who I'm sure will be thrilled by this discovery.
I am truly very thrilled about that discovery, everybody. And now I've lost picture here. I'm going to have to start throwing things. I'm trying to drive the rover to my next thing that I want to show you. There we go. Okay, now, I am so thrilled, of course, because hyenas, I think, are just spectacular. Oh, there it is. Haha, it worked. Look. Look, Viam, it seems to have died in the midst of eating something. Everybody, that is a hyena skull. And what I want you to notice as we drive around it, let me just drive up a little bit further like this, is the fact that it has something in between its jaws. Now, that thing in between its jaws is a large bone. And the thing about that bone is that only, I mean, obviously I've placed it there, it didn't actually really die there. That bone is a hyena is the only thing that can eat a bone that sort of size, and it wouldn't have used the teeth that I have placed the bone in between there. Those are the incisors, and of course the canine teeth. But those very on the top, on the sort of bottom right-hand side of your screen there, that I've just backed up a bit, you can see the carnassial teeth. Those are the molars, and it's the premolars. Those in between. You can see there in between the canine, which is the long thing, and the sort of slightly long one on the right-hand side of the jaw there. In between that, you can see those premolars, which are chisel-shaped, and it's those that this hyena would have used to bite through that very thick bone. And inside the bone, of course, if you come out here, I'll actually show you what the bone looks like. I know that you have a cable there. You can wait for me if you like. Inside the bone here, of course, was all that really delicious marrow. Now, I've been through this with you a few times, but I just find it so fascinating to talk about. Marrow, of course, has a lot of fat in it. Fat in it is massively important for human well-being as well as many of the animals out here. And for humans, certainly ones that lived before the days of McDonald's and Burger King, fat was a really difficult thing to get at, and that, the bone marrow, was a major source of animal fat, crucial to especially pregnant women. Let's head back to somebody who's not pregnant anymore, but hopefully has just given birth to special cubs in that den.
Well, as you can see, we have drastically improved our view of this hyena entrance den. I have good news for you though, because as I pulled up into this position, she popped her head up once again, and it is absolutely the hyena that we saw the other day in this den. You know, there was a sort of a possibility that perhaps it was just a random hyena. We've confirmed that, and I'd recognize her anywhere. She's got in her right ear, she's got a huge, not a huge chunk, but kind of the top part of the curve is completely missing, and instead has just sort of got jagged edges. And that could well have been from any kind of encounter with some of the other hyenas of the hyena den. The reason I know her so well, I will never ever forget her face, was because the day that we saw her being attacked, she actually tried to climb underneath the vehicle to get away from the other hyenas. And obviously I couldn't let that happen. I didn't want to let that happen, so I moved the vehicle away from her. And once it ended, she came and she sort of looked at us with blood all over her ear and blood all over her side and her feet, and she just looked so incredibly miserable and beaten up. I think she's quite an old hyena, just judging by the state of her teeth. She's got very yellow, cracked, rotten, the tips of her canines are missing their points, and I think this is her. She's the mother to, for those of you who've been watching for many years, you'll be familiar with her. She was the mother of the twins from February last year. And while we patiently wait here, over to Steph with a feathered friend.
Well, welcome back to this, what's fast becoming an evening bushwalk, but we've still got some light, and in the light that we've got, you have got a red-billed oxpecker. Now, a few days ago, I can't actually remember when it was, but a few days ago on the walk, there was some there we go. got a bit camera shy. But in any case, a few days ago on the walk, we found that these oxpeckers were returning to this tree here with nesting material, which is the fur from the animals that they sit on. We couldn't quite see what fur it was that they were bringing in, but definitely think or know that there's a red-billed oxpecker's nest inside this tree. And the oxpeckers, they nest in the disused holes of crested barbets and woodpeckers. Now there must be a woodpecker hole inside there. Inside of it is these oxpeckers, and they're taking bits and pieces of fur that they've combed out of the animals with their jaw, with their beak, and they're lining the nest with that fur. And I think that there's probably one of the mating pairs that are inside there now with some chicks. Can't hear anything. As soon as that bird landed, we walked here to see if we could hear the feeding cries of any of the young oxpeckers, but no, we couldn't. So my feeling is that they're still sitting on eggs right now. But definitely, this is a route that we like to take from time to time, and it's definitely a place that I'll come back to and check over the next couple of days and weeks to see what baby oxpeckers are coming out. All right, let's head back up here. I don't want to get into too thick bush this time of the night. As I said, walking around here in the dark is definitely not conducive to a long life. And the reason for that is that we really become part of the food chain here at night time. We really are part of the animals that don't have a lot of adaptations for nocturnal activities, and definitely don't want to be here in the dark. Lion become very, very brave when the sun goes down. But with that tent not too far away, James has definitely got something there that he wants to show you while we carry on down the road.
This is just my very favourite time of the day. Well, this and the same time sort of in the morning, just after the sun has gone down or just before it comes up. And if Viam shows you down over there, you can see the sun has gone down. There's a little breeze that's come up as the golden orb of our very own star has disappeared over the western horizon. You can hear some hardy-dar ibis going ha, 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 ha. Off to the north. They're flying somewhere special, who knows where, somewhere to roost for the night. And of course, as the night falls, so the creatures of the night start to get active, and one of those is at the waterhole now. There, a hippopotamus out of the water. Now that is a fantastically held shot by the Zumi. And the Zumi, of course, dedicated human beings around the world who operate our damn cameras, and we're extremely grateful. That's a Nyala walking past the front of there. Extremely grateful for the work that they do. That hippo, actually, I said that he was probably in pretty bad nick because he had chosen to live in that sort of mucky pond. There's the Nyala now having a bit of a drink, but actually he looks pretty well. And there's some nice green grass there because of the water, and that's what he's eating. Now, we don't often get to see them like this. Normally during the day, normally during any kind of light hours, they're in the water. And this chap has obviously come out just a little bit earlier than most of the time that they would. And I think that's wonderful to watch him eat there and cropping away that grass. All around water sources in this area and the Kruger Park and other wildlife areas in Africa, you will find these lawns that appear. And the lawns, of course, are because the hippos crop the grass so very short. They don't have very impressive sort of short grass cropping equipment like many of the other herbivores. They've just got these sort of fat lips that they use to, you can see him flapping his fat lips there over the grass. And so instead of pulling the grass plants out of the ground like many of the other grazers do, he just kind of tops them at the top. He seems to be eating quite a lot of soil there. And I mean that genuinely. They do eat quite a lot of soil because, of course, they are geophagic. They don't get a lot of their nutrients from the grass, and so they must every so often eat a little bit of mineral or get a little bit of mineral content from the soil. Let's head across to Steph, who has found what I think is a processionary worm.
Well, welcome back, and it absolutely is a processionary worm parade. And you know what, today's been really special this afternoon. You found that pseudo-scorpion with me a little bit earlier. I haven't seen one of those in the wild in more than a year. And this particular caterpillar species, I haven't seen this summer yet. And they're very common when it's very wet, but not so common this year. But have a look at the way that these worms, these caterpillars, they all stretch from about here. This is the lead worm where my stick is now, all the way to about here, where you see my stick coming out of the bottom over here. And they all are attached to one another with a line of silk. And the reason why they're all together is so that from a distance they look like something bigger than what they are. And that is a protective measure, it's a defensive mechanism to help them walk from place to place to feed. So when they get to a nice tree that they enjoy eating, what they do then is they branch out into the tree, they eat all those leaves, and when the leaves are done, what they do is they move out of the tree, joined by one another by this line of silk, and move off. Now what I still don't know, and this is after all these years, almost 20 years of working in the bush, is what makes worm number 1 so special. And I'll tell you this, as soon as worm number 2 is separated from worm number 1 by that line of silk, so if that line of silk is cut, all the worms group up onto one another and they will actually die in that group. I've seen heaps of processionary worms dead when animals have just literally kicked one of the worms away from the lead group. So as long as the worm number 1 is joined by silk to worm number 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 all the way down to I don't know how many worms are there, 30 or 40, they'll all keep on walking. As soon as you cut that line of silk, they'll bunch up onto one another. What makes worm number 1 become worm number 1? Well, that is one of those unanswerable questions that I have. But let's just have a look back at these worms. They've reached the end of their stick and now they're doubling back. And isn't it wonderful that you can get into the bush, into the middle of it, just like we're doing right now? It's one of the wonders of this bushwalk, and of course of Dave's athleticism. So now, worm number 1, which is here somewhere with his friends, has now doubled back. And that's why this column of worms have come to a standstill, is they're waiting for worm number 1 to decide where they go next. Isn't it incredible? These, by the way, turn into moths. But have a look at that. Not something that you want to get in your t-shirt. Wow, Debbie, all the way from Vancouver, good morning to you. Or it might still be evening there if morning hasn't come. But you said if it's late in the season to find these processionary worms, isn't it a bit late to pupate? You know what, I think that's a good question. Basically what happens is, why caterpillars come out in middle summer is because that's when the leaf load is at its highest. What will happen then is they eat enough, hopefully, in a summer to get enough energy to pupate and change into, in this particular case, a moth, a processionary worm moth. Now, I don't know if the insect load has been low this year. Well, it has been low because of the rain, but when these guys hatched, these worms may have hatched a few weeks ago and has just been taken an extra long time to pupate. My gut feel tells me that they'll pupate when they're ready to pupate. There's still a lot of leaves around, even though there's not that much grass. And my hope is that we'll actually see some processionary worm caterpillar moths that will then carry over the next generation to next year. I could only imagine, Debbie, that there will be, although less of them, there will be some processionary worm moths that lay eggs that will become processionary worm caterpillars as soon as the rains come back. It's the way things must work. Not everything can die, which is a good thing. Now, Luke, you asked me, how does the first worm get chosen? And you know what? That is exactly the question that I've asked myself literally for 20 years. Oh, now, you're coming around here so that I can answer this question properly, Luke. Come and have a look over here. Join me in the bush over here. How does the first worm in the procession get chosen? Luke, I honestly couldn't tell you. And what I've done is I've actually experimented with these worms. I've cut the silk myself, and all the worms pile up, but the last worm in the line leaves a trail of silk. And if I join the last worm in the line to the group of worms, all of a sudden a new procession is formed, and all the worms in the pile then move off and follow that procession again. It still doesn't answer the question at what actually is the first worm in the procession. I'm not sure.
Well, Steph starts to wander home, and I think he's probably going to have to relatively soon, we have left the hyena den, and I did have to drag myself away, I have to be honest. It was with great reluctance that I left, but it was getting a little bit dark, and wonder upon wonders, the lions have come out at Buffelshoek Dam, where we started checking earlier. So that is where we are on our way to right now. We just got to take this rather bumpy patch a bit slowly. I know that Wendy has just made a miraculous return, but we can't risk losing Rusty either. Okay, and here we go. We're going to go a bit fast, just because we don't want to. They're right up in the corner of Djuma, which means they either need to go a little bit to the north or a little bit to the east, and they will have gone outside of our traverse area. That the one Kahuma female on Torchwood has come out of her den site with her cubs, according to Mike from Cheetah Plains, and is currently suckling them as we speak, which is incredibly special. So while we race across to those lions, let's head back across to James in the tent.
Here we are, the light is fading, not the tent is fading, of course, and up above us, the silvery moon doth hang in the sky. There it is. Can you see it, Viam?
A little bit of it.
A little bit of it. There we go. Now, of course, Viam is doing this handheld, which is an almost impossible task. And as Steph was saying, it does become a little bit less than safe to wander about out here at night. But this tent of ours here, of course, suffices as some form of human habitation, and animals don't want to come near human habitation in general. There was that amazing viral video that went up the other day of lions licking a group of travellers' tents, and that was amazing. But normally, you know, the sounds and smells of human beings make animals avoid them. And so living in an area like this, if you were to come and visit Djuma or Arathusa or Cheetah Plains, you'd be in a camp that was as in the middle of the bush as we are right here. But because there is a little bit of noise, there's light, there are unfamiliar smells, animals generally avoid the immediate vicinity. Yes, a leopard might slink through in the night, or a hyena might come by and steal your dustbin, as they did to our dustbin 2 nights ago. But in general, you'll find that animals will avoid it, so it's relatively safe to be around if you're careful. But as the night falls, of course, animals that are active at night become much more confident. Lions and hyenas specifically become a lot more confident as the night falls. So Viam and I are going to go back into the tent now. Now, Ken, I often wonder when we talk about these things whether or not people do understand what we're talking about. You say, what is the difference between the call of a wild animal and its alarm call? Well, its alarm call, Ken, is basically what it does when it is very scared. So, for example, if an impala sees a leopard, it will make an alarm, snorting, absolutely. But context of things, different noises they make, but an alarm call is specifically for alarm, for some kind of something has made the animals afraid. So in the case of a monkey, they're able to make 3 or 4 different kinds of alarm calls depending on what is threatening them. Now, Geraldine has just found me a very special spider that seems to be in the very last throes of its existence. And what I want to try and do is have a look at it under the microscope here. Let me just load that up. I'm going to remove it by hand It is still slightly alive, so if I drop dead, everybody, know that I died happily trying to show you the joys of an arachnid. I'm obviously being totally exaggerating completely here, but because a baboon spider like this one is not a biter in general, I'm not actually going to put it under the microscope yet. It is definitely dying. I don't know why it's dying, but you can see it's hardly moving at all. And that is the baboon spider, and it is a part of the tarantula family. How amazing is this stunning, stunning spider? And I don't know why she probably is on her last legs. But we've had some amazing spider sightings today. We've had little Charlotte, who lives in the buffalo skull, and now this baboon spider. What we can try and do, let's just try this quickly. I'm not going to put her under the microscope. I'll try and take the microscope and put the microscope over the top. Let's quickly, while I try this, there's a wonderful picture of Stefan playing drum majorettes in the sunset.
Funny enough, that's exactly what I thought that I'd use the stick for, is a little bit of drum majorette practice while I was waiting to say goodbye to you. But it's getting very dark at the moment, definitely way too dark for us to be walking around in the thick stuff on the edge of quarantine. But I'm going to say goodbye. Myself and Dave have had a lot of fun this afternoon. Pseudoscorpion, processionary worms, woo woo, yay! Yeah. All right, and we'll see you very, very soon for another bushwalk. All the best.
So there, everybody, is just an extreme close-up of the hairs of the spider. What I'm trying to find, but failing to do, is find the eyes. It's got two little eyes. Let me just zoom out a little bit. There they are. Somewhere in there. There. Okay, those two things there. Can you see the two? It looks like almost like an antelope's hoof there, in that with a gap in the middle. Now that gap in the middle are the two chelicerae, and on the chelicerae are the fangs into which it will use to spike into its prey, and just behind there, the two shiny brown bits are its little eyes. There is a magnificent sighting now with another female predator and Jamie.
Wonderful way to finish off with the last few moments of our sunset safari with the lions. Sorry, just waving hello to some of the other vehicles that are making their way into the sighting. There's one lioness here. This is the one that I think has the suckle marks. There's also two males and a female that I can't see at the moment, but Elvis tells me are just around the corner. Unfortunately, it's something of a, not a traffic jam, that's the wrong word, but space is limited at the moment since they are doing some alterations to this waterhole, which means that there's lots of equipment and large machines about. But we'll settle for now with the view of this gorgeous lioness eyeing right up against the water's edge. Ah, here we go. Chandra. Awesome. And this, I think, is Amber Eyes, if it's her from this morning. And you can see male showing plenty of interest in her. And she's a little bit irritated with him. Tail thrashing a bit. She's going to ignore him. I think he's going to continue onto the dam wall. Keeping a close eye on where she's off to. He is round-bellied and full. She, on the other hand, is not really. She's hungry. She's going to be wanting to find food. Oh. How cool is that? Just in case you needed a reminder just how fierce these females can be, she gave him a very clear message. Told you she wasn't very happy. She was a bit like this morning as well. Amber Eyes doesn't take any nonsense from anybody. Hey girl, these boys been harassing you all day. Well, what I think might be happening here, and I'm just going to change the angle of the spotlight ever so slightly. And in fact, I'm going to take the spotlight off so that we've got this incredible lighting coming from the other vehicle. Look how beautiful this is. What I think is happening is I think the pregnancy hormones are causing the males a little bit of confusion. Now, he's not the only male here, there is a second one, but they've been keeping a distance from each other, almost in the same way they do when one female is in estrus. And I think the hormones are just confusing them. And I think as a result, they've been harassing both the pregnant or lactating female, as well as Amber Eyes. I think she's been caught up in this as well. And she is just so fed up with him. Wasn't that incredible, that deep snarl that she gave? Couldn't have given him a clearer message if she tried. Now here's an interesting thing I've noticed about Amber Eyes just while we're looking at her, which I've never realized before. The backs of her ears are not as black as some of the other females in the pride. When she turns her head, and she will at some point turn her head, be able to show you exactly what I mean by that. The black on the back of her ears kind of only comes back sort of up to about halfway. And it's not nearly as dark even as this Birmingham boy's the back of this Birmingham boy's ears. And it's just one of those things that you start to notice when you spend an enormous amount of time with these animals, especially with our incredible cameras that give us the best possible look or glimpses. Whoops. Spotlight gone. I'll provide my own light for now. But it is just one of those things that you pick up on. Now, Lynn, you were wondering if they will still mate if she is pregnant. The answer is usually not, no. However, that isn't an absolute certainty. The reason I say that is because I recently heard a story about a female leopard that had just given birth and was seen mating with a male, probably in a way of almost pacification and protecting her newborn cubs. Lions might fake an estrus cycle in order, whether physically it happens automatically in their bodies, in order to convince the males and to help broker a peace deal. So we've seen it with females when they are in the middle of a pride takeover and they've got young cubs. They often apparently come into false estrus and try and distract the males by essentially seducing them and keeping them away from their cubs. Here comes our second male. He has just emerged up out of the drainage line. And the guests in that vehicle are about to be head height with him. They've been doing this morning as well plenty of urine spraying and scratching their back feet, scent marking the area. Oh, look at that, guys. I can't shine, so I'm not sure how clearly you can see that. I know it's very grainy, but I can't obviously shine straight into the faces of the guests. But just look at that. Look at how close he is. First of all, how close he is to them, but how eye level he is with the driver of that vehicle, with Abel. That's hilarious. Imagine how you would feel if you were the guests on that vehicle and this was your first safari experience. Imagine what it would be like being eye level as it starts to get dark with a male lion. We're going to try and test our infrared ability. I'm going to try and work out how on earth this works. Chandra, what do I do with this?
Same as a normal spotlight.
Same as a normal spotlight. Okie dokie. Okay. So while you distract yourself with that male lion, I'm going to attempt to figure this out. Everybody hold on one moment. This could be interesting. Oh, here we go. My goodness, you say just like a normal spotlight, it's about 40 times heavier. How do I know if it's on? Is it on? Okay.
Try to point it at him. We're going to go and see it.
Okay, I will try point it at him. Am I going to... Oh, whoops. Hey, look at that. Except I don't think that's me. Is that me?
No.
No. Oh, how do I tell if it's on? Oh.
But you won't see it. It's invisible to us.
I know it's
Squeeze the
invisible.
trigger.
Okay, I'll just hold the trigger, shall I?
There you go. That's you.
That's us. How cool is this, guys?
And the others can't see you.
And it's not going to bug the other people on the vehicle, I hope. This is so cool. Oh, this is like being given a brand new toy. I just want to shine on all the things. And now I feel guilty because it feels like I'm shining a light in their face, but I know I'm not. This is awesome. Should we try the next one? I'm so excited by this. Sorry, guys. There we go. Shine over. And down to that female. And you can clearly see doesn't have a spotlight on her at all. There we go. How cool is this? No lights in her eyes. Nothing bothering her. This is super cool. I mean, most of you know me by now. My technological awareness is relatively limited, but this is definitely one of the coolest things I've got to play with so far. They never let me fly the drone. For good reason. I can barely manage my own walking without tripping over my own feet, so fair enough. This is so cool. And you get an arm workout at exactly the same time, trying to hold it steady. So now if I take this light away, then you've got this. It's interesting. So this is normal light when compared to our infrared that was on the other lioness. It still looks really cool. We shine on him because the spotlight's not really reaching there. There we go. He looks very peaceful and very much fast asleep. I'm sorry everybody, I might be bouncing you all over the place now, but I'm just having so much fun. Hugely entertaining. Oh, big yawn. Now both of the females, or at least Amber Eyes, is hungry. The males are not, and Sally has said you would think that it would be in the males' interests to make sure that the females are well fed, since they need them to propagate their genes, which is of course one of the clearest of the biological, oopsie, sorry, it's a bit heavy, fell over, the clearest of the biological functions. And Sally, that is a really good point, but it's a survival of the fittest, and male lions don't really think in the same way we do in terms of logic, and evolutionary wise the females have always managed to take care of themselves well enough that it doesn't matter terribly much if the males don't let them, or at least take the lion's share of the meal, let's put it that way. Cool. Alright, I'm going to back to colour, since we've got the wonderful lights of the lionesses drinking. And cat in temper, absolutely no. I mean, look, this is also an extraordinary view. It's absolutely stunning. But at the same time, the possibilities with this infrared, I don't know what I'd call it, night vision spotlight is so exciting. I want to go and look at all the things now, except that, of course, we're going to stay with the lions, see where they decide to go. There you can see she is very empty-bellied. Liz, I completely agree with you. You're saying that you do see a night drive coming soon, and this possibility of aardvarks included.
Put infrared on.
Hmm?
Can you put infrared back on?
I can, absolutely. This is so much fun. I'm so distracted. Liz, can you imagine watching an aardvark like this, or an elephant herd like this, or I don't know, a bush baby, or anything that we could possibly see? The possibilities are endless. So incredibly cool. And by the time I'm finished, I'm going to have biceps like Chandre's calves. Maybe not quite, but they'll certainly be more impressive than they are now. This is the female that I think is lactating, and I'm hoping that she might stand up and give us a bit of a view of the suspected suckle marks. This is incredibly cool. Oops, sorry, Chandre. It's quite hard to hold up. I mean, it's not hard to hold up, it's just ungainly. There we go, that's better. Pleasure. Anything to get to experiment with this new toy. And I'm wondering at the possibilities that we could put this to use with. These lines show up so beautifully clearly. Just look at Buffelshoek Dam. I am also vaguely aware of a slight, gentle, buzzing electrical current running through my fingers. In a not too serious way. Still on. Yes, it is still on. Oh, it's so hard. It's so weird because I can't see it. I can only see it if I'm looking in the monitor, so it's sort of point and shoot without realizing or without having any guidance unless I look at it through the eyes of the camera. This is so cool. She's grooming. She's not drinking. She's grooming, I think. Her feet. Oh, sorry. And cat in temper. Yes, I assume that we are able to shine this on the prey and the prey species. To the best of my knowledge, it's not going to affect them in any way. And what that means is that we could actually witness lion hunts or predator stalks at the very least in the dark. And no, not just that, obviously. It's not just about watching that sort of thing. It's also about the fact that we could, in theory, also just view our diurnal animals like wild dogs or perhaps cheetah at night. The lioness. The lion, I think, has given up on his pursuit of the females, and the lionesses are off. Now guys, if they do move into the thick bush, we will... Oh, oopsie. How far does this range extend? Far. Where'd they go? Oh, there he is. Now we will let them disappear off. We won't try and stay with them. The reason I say that is because, as I said earlier, we can't really afford to risk Rusty at this stage. I don't want to do any damage off-roading at night. But it's okay, because actually the males are still around and the females are actually, I think, making their way back. The only disadvantage with this is I don't think I can spotlight and hold this at the same time. So apart from where it's pointed, I'm flying almost completely blind at this stage.
So we'll show what it looks like without infrared.
Okay, yes, let's have a look at what it looks like without infrared.
There we go.
And that's it. That is how incredible technology is. Isn't this so cool? Endless amusement. Let's go look at our other male. I don't know where he is. I can't see him at all. Is he there? No, he's definitely not. He's gone. Okay, so we've got the slight disadvantage here in that I can't see anything unless Jandre points the camera at it. So we're gonna have to do a switch now, so that I can see where these lions are. Oh, whoopsie. Whoopsie daisies. I don't know where they went. Oops, and better not blind these poor people coming behind me either. Oh, there they are. Okay. No harm done. So while we reposition, get you another view with our super cool new toy, let's head back to James in the tent.
Isn't that so cool? I mean, I think that's, I guess again, I've forgotten to turn the sound off. I think that's just wonderful, isn't it? We're going to be able to view those animals at night. And of course, I'm not sure, I didn't hear Jamie say it, I'm sure she did. But the big thing about that is that the animal can't see the light at all. And so I thought it was amazing when you had that shot over the top of the Land Rover, over Abel to the lion. And Abel, of course, in full picture and had no idea that there was a light on him, which I just think is fantastic. So it really is going to open up a whole load of possibilities for us. The next thing, of course, is going to be turning that into colour. But many colourful things to say about these lions. Let's go back to Jamie.
Sure you're recording? Oh, just have a look at this. This is absolutely incredible. Here's an iconic image for you. A male lion resting right underneath one of the graders, one of the diggers. Absolutely awesome. Look at that. It's so cool. Let's try and get some extra light on it. There we go. How's that? I hope you took lots of screenshots of that situation, because that was absolutely hilarious. Here's the pregnant lioness, or at least the slightly larger, the one that I thought had suckle marks. Not very clear, and I'm not sure where Amber Eyes went. I think she must have gone further up the drainage line. There you go, relieving herself, which she's done she's been doing this regularly since we've seen her, and I'm not 100% convinced. She kind of looks pregnant, but yet she's got what look like suckle marks. And we had a debate this morning about whether or not a pregnant lioness would actually allo-suckle another's young
one of the lioness's young, since there is one female with babies in Torchwood. She would be lactating, she would be producing milk. It would just be a matter of the cubs suckling on her. And here we go, let's have a look at this view for a second. It's pretty magnificent. Now before we get to the end of our safari, I think we should try one more time with our UV. What do you think, Chandra? That's just because I want to. Okay, I'm taking the spotlight off. You can see how dark it's going to go. And whoops. Here we go. And from what we can tell, not interfering with their eyesight in any way, shape or form. He's dozing away quite happily. Look at that. There is that tapetum lucidum. Is that still a reflection from this infrared? Because there was a bit of a glow there when he opened his eye. That's fascinating, because we're not shining on him. We're just shining next to him. Very cool. So I hope you're all taking lots and lots of awesome screenshots and sending them through on hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. This is definitely awesome. Apparently some of you are sending through the most amazing screenshots. Thank you all very, very much. And while we leave him to doze, we can have another look at, definitely I feel, one of the most hilarious images we've managed to bring you. Oh, he's going to come right up past us. This is so cool. And as he walks away from the grader, Christina said that she hopes that the workman was not inside there. Whew. How's your heart rate there, Gendre? You nearly brushed against the car. And even though that's happened to me so many times in my life, my heart still beats a bit faster when a big male lion does that right next to the vehicle. This phenomenal moment of realizing just how comfortable they are with us. Yes, you do. Much more affection there, hey? Your buddy is sometimes just so much better than the ladies are. Having a good cuddle session because they've both been rejected by their girlfriends. Hi guys! Very, very cool. You can just see their tails lifting up, all intertwined. And that's very typical. Male lions often show what seems like more affection than the females do towards the males. They show more affection towards each other. This has been such a cool experiment. And I dare not take my foot off the brake of Rusty because I fear we're about to go tumbling into the digger on the slope. And they, I think, have decided to let the ladies move on out of their sight and off hunting. And they're going to... Oh, sorry everybody, my arm's about to fall off. It's really surprisingly hefty for something so small. It's probably about... Oh, it's a slight exaggeration. It's probably about 20 odd pounds. Oh, he's up for our last few moments of the sunset safari. We'll leave you with this infrared view of a male lion in all his glory. And we will have to follow up tomorrow to find out where these animals decide to go. We're going to let them head off playfully into the bushes, and we will catch up with them again at some point in the future. This has been so much fun. So thank you to Jean-Andre for his fantastic camera work and for giving me a new toy to play with and fantastic camera work with a new camera, as well as to the lovely ladies in Final Control. And as we gently roll and stutter forward, thank you to all of you out there across the globe. We hope that you have a fantastic day or evening, and we will catch up with you tomorrow. Bye-bye, everybody.